I'm just looking for it on your channel.
Okay, don't talk. Hello, it's Vincent and I together again to talk about the thing we usually talk about, the no hide laws. Vincent has been making quite a few videos recently, haven't you? Short and long ones, solo and with others.
Yeah, actually, I thought you didn't. I thought we weren't going to talk about the no-hide laws, but we can talk about them a little bit. Um,
Oh, okay. I thought you meant, I thought you wanted to talk about the no hide laws. What did you think we were going to talk about?
I don't know. I didn't know what we were going to talk about.
Well, okay, well, I mean, we can talk about your week so far, or anything else that's on your mind.
Can you just send me a link to the video so I can look at the live chat as well? Because I don't see it on your channel. I don't see the live stream on your channel. Are you sure we're live streaming?
Yeah, it's live on the Hardcore Prawn. Maybe you're looking at the other channel.
Oh, we're on the hardcore prawn. Okay. Okay. Um, Here, Vince and I discussed
I
some.
did say I would alternate between one and the other. And actually, it should. Oh, I get a bit confused about which one I did before. You know.
Yeah, we're on the hardcore prawn.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I mean I was on Adam Green and I have two more shows coming up.
On Friday, right?
I have one on Thursday and one on Friday.
Oh, who's the Thursday one with? I know Friday is Israeli Network News, isn't it?
Israeli News Live.
Okay, Israeli News Live, and what's the one on Thursday? Who's that with?
It's with this guy Eric Gajewski. Um, his his channel is Trad Cat Night. He has about 150,000 subscribers. Um, I think his name is Eric Gajewski. If you give me 1 second, I'll just whatever. I think that's his name, Eric Gajewski. I don't want to sign out of my. But
Erica, isn't that the girl's name?
Eric,
Oh, Eric. Okay, okay, Eric. Oh, so what kind of streams does he do?
um, well, his name is Trad Cat Knight, which stands for Traditional Catholic Knight. I'm putting his YouTube channel in the room. Um, he
Oh, I'll put it in the chat so we can all
Yeah,
see
put it
it.
in the
Yeah,
chat. So
the live
he's
chat.
a traditional Catholic, and I haven't really listened to much of his channel. Uh, I actually haven't listened to anything from his channel, so I don't know exactly what his agenda is. I think that from looking at, and he has this thing, the Vatican New World Order Agenda and Prophecy Exposed. I would think that he's one of these anti-Vatican, anti-Pope Catholics who think that the Catholic Church has been taken over, and um, yeah, like I'm looking at this, the Antichrist will take Rome, and Rome will perish. Um, yeah, okay, he's anti-Freemason.
They tend to
Um,
be Catholics. I think the Catholic Church doesn't want them to fix with what doesn't want Catholics to mix with other members of the Abrahamic faith in case they are influenced in away from Catholicism.
right,
Because this is what
right.
Michael Voris said. If you follow what well, I don't follow him anymore, but that's a kind of traditional Catholic thing that you're not allowed to if you're Catholic you're not allowed to join the Freemasons, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's I've seen that there is an anti-Catholic, but they have the Knights of Columbus. So, I mean, yeah, they have the Knights of Columbus, so what does it, really matter? They have their own agenda, and when it comes to the Noahide laws, the Vatican has already said twice that they are incumbent upon humanity, and so it wouldn't be all that. Freemasonry is infiltrated at the highest levels, and so would be the Knights of Columbus.
What are you saying? Infiltrated by Jews?
Infiltrated by the Noahide agenda, it doesn't necessarily need to be directly Jews. I mean, yeah, you and John Gisela brought up this point. You were saying, well, it's the Gentiles who are passing all these laws, but of course they're influenced by Jews at the top. It's Jews at the top that are making this happen. The Gentiles just pass the laws and everything like that. But
Well, I mean,
yeah,
there are people. I mean, there was once upon a time when people thought, yeah, we want to be no hide. To be no hide is good. It's a minimum moral standard, and obviously all of us should have a minimum moral standard. Blah blah blah, and the whole reason why Christians were declared as no hides was that Christians would be pretty pissed off if they were told they were not no hides. So it's kind of like, well, the Jews said, well, we're living in their countries now. If we tell them they're not no hides, they're going to be really, really, really offended, and they'll do mean things to us. So we better call them no hide so we can do business with them and profit thereby. But
well, I don't know if they were asking to be. Well, I don't know. I don't think Christians are looking for the seal of approval for Noahide. I think that they
well,
don't
not
want to be
not now. I mean, but why do you think the Vatican is saying, yeah, that's great. We want to be no hide, and weren't you saying that Putin wants to be no hide? I mean, it's like it's a seal of approval. They want to be declared a no hide nation. Imagine, Americans if Chabad said, well, we're very sorry that we called you no hide. We don't think you are. Yes, let Vince repeal all the the public law, what, 108, 104, how do you call it?
Public Law 102-14 and Public Law 103-14. And on that, I just put up the petition for that. So the petition is out. Let me just share that in the chat. So if I can get as many people as possible to sign that, I would really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
yeah, but I mean, I guess if I were Jewish and if I were Chabad, I'd say, yeah, let Vince do that because America is not a no-hide nation. Look at the Globo Homo agenda. Look at them. legalizing gay marriage. Of course, they're not Noahide. Let them repeal it. Let them repeal it because it's not, so they could play it that way. And then there'll be a lot of Americans really offended that they're not considered Noahide anymore. How dare they not consider us Noahide? Da, 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 da. So I think you
But I
maybe
think that
should
you're also
consider the
this is
possibility.
I don't think, and most Americans don't know about the Noahide laws, and those who are involved in it, it's very esoteric. I don't think that the average non-Jew is sitting around being like, we want Noahide compliance. It's only these leaders all the way at the top that understand these things that are implementing this, but the average person doesn't know, doesn't
The
care
average
anything.
person is not even Christian, and he's more likely to be an anti-Semite than he is to be a Christian. So they'll go along with your agenda because it's like, oh yeah, yeah, apart from doing all the things that we say they've done to us over the centuries, they want to behead us as well. I mean, I think they'll probably agree with you, like, oh, let's kick out all these things because it's a kind of anti-Semitic trope, like the no-hide laws. It's these Jews; they want to control us in that way as well. I mean, I know
Well, it's
Brundle.
not a
Remember
trope.
Brundle? He was really. I mean, I'm sure he'd be rooting for you, even though he doesn't quite like you, as you know, when you first met him.
Yes, I mean, I think it becomes a trope. It's not a trope. This is their obvious intention. They have an intention that it just comes into when is any of this viable. My agenda again is that I'm not stating that this is happening tomorrow, but we should just foil their plans before they even have a chance to put them in action anywhere. Um, but the idea that
What? But
Jews want, I mean, they obviously do want control through the Noahide law. Rabbi Cohen at the International Noahide Code Center up at the UN said that they want all the nations to enter the Noahide laws into their constitution. You keep saying that perhaps maybe these Noahide courts would not be overseen by Jews, or maybe it wouldn't be centralized in Israel, or Israel needs to become a theocracy before any of this is possible. Um, it's still, they are looking for control. They're at least looking to control what we say on paper and what we do on paper and what we proclaim ourselves. The control is starting out small.
Well, I mean,
Um,
they assert control in that, so many majority Gentile nations are terrified of saying anything in case it offends Jews. And in the UK, Alison Shablow is treated as if she were found guilty of Holocaust denial, even though officially there are no Holocaust denial laws in the UK. So, in that way, you could be said that the Jews control, the legislature. But, I think it's because Gentiles are just so spineless, they just let it all, wash over them without any protest. It's like they can say anything they like, and then the pos Gentile will do it because it wants their votes or something. It's like it's almost a neurosis. It's like, oh, sorry, we didn't know, and it's like, well, you don't have to be like that. It's your country. But
no,
still they
exactly.
behave like that, and then in the UK they're building Holocaust memorials all over the place, and it doesn't even make sense from a Jewish point of view because it's like if I were Jewish I'd be saying, well, just don't put up visible stuff for people to vandalize and destroy because it'll only annoy them, and then they'll be roused into such hatred and fury they'll probably want to do stuff, commit acts of criminal damage and vandalism, and it's just a pain. So better not make it invisible. But I think there are two schools of Jewish thought in the same way that there are two schools of Gentile thought. And okay, this is my theory, which is that Jews aren't that clever and they don't know what they're doing, and one, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing or has no control over over, what the other side do. And we all know, whether we like Jews or not, is that the majority of Jews are liberal, just as we know that the majority of Gentiles are liberal. So I know there's a backlash now against all these, decades of liberal policy that people are, beginning to kind of push back on by electing Trump, by voting for Brexit, and that kind of thing. And it's like, they've had enough. 50 years of these policies. And that, that they've had it up to their ears, and they're not having any more. And the pushback is beginning, and the liberal establishment is getting very nervous indeed, because, they're just starting to realize that there are more people who are pissed off with the government than the people who are happy with the government. And because they censor everything, they don't have a right assessment of public opinion. So, it's like, if you shut your ears, so you won't hear people criticizing you. You won't hear their warnings, you won't hear their threats until, I guess, you hit a brick wall, or a brick hits you. I don't know, but I don't think we're being rationally governed at the moment. And I don't think, I don't think the Jews know what they're doing. It's like, some Jews want to do that, other Jews don't give a damn. Some Jews are conservative, others, think they can be liberal and a Jew and fit in and whatever. And, I basically think that you can't be a good Jew and a good liberal. Because it's basically like saying, oh, I'm a good Jewish Nazi. It's impossible. You're not meant to be in one person, kind of thing. And
Right. Well, the only difference that I would say is that liberal Jews and conservative Jews tend to have more to collaborate on than liberal Gentiles and conservative Gentiles, and that I think both liberal and conservative Jews would favor anti-Semitic speech legislation, so they would come together on that.
yeah,
Um,
they would, but it's like, if they're so clever, they're really stupid, because there's nothing more likely to provoke hatred than being told that you're not supposed to hate, certain groups. Because
yeah,
immediately you think, who the hell is a government to tell me whom I can or cannot hate? Who are these people who cannot be offended? And it's
right.
like, oh, it's all the people above you. It's like, oh, I never knew they were above me. I thought, me being here, living here, with my ancestors being born here, generation after generation, how come those people that just came off the boat are now higher in status than me? What the fuck happened? That's a kind of thinking that I anticipate any questioning indigenous white person might think, and they'll think, oh, it's the Jews, they did it to us. And what I'm trying to do is say, well, actually, no, it's just like, you've left the way open, and they've just climbed above you. And it's like, unfortunately, your corrupt politicians, they don't give a shit about you. They don't care. They don't even think that you're useful workers. And that is part of the problem. Education is so bad that nobody wants to hire the local workers. They don't want them. So that's why, they'll sneakily, or not so sneakily, let, boatloads of migrants in, because at least they'll be so grateful to be here, being migrants from Syria or whatever. They'll be so happy to be here, they'll work for peanuts and work long hours. But the locals think, well, it's not worth me getting out of bed for less than £300 a week, or whatever. And I
Well,
think, it's the locals, they can't believe that the government doesn't care about them, and so they blame the Jews.
I mean, the problem is that Jews are disproportionately found in all intellectual movements, whether they're conservative
Yeah,
or
because they're cleverer in that their entire culture is to value education, and that kind of thing. And these, it's like, okay, even if no Jews existed, the fact is that the smarter people will always have more power over the stupid people. And especially if they're smart and they have money, and they know, lots of people who are like that, who are Gentiles. It's just, inevitable. It's kind of a
Well, I
law of
mean,
nature.
my opinion, I mean, the way I see it is that Jews don't have good intentions for Gentiles. That
They
is,
don't care about us. I mean, it's just that or they think that they're victims and that, Gentiles have been victimizing them. And of course, there's historical evidence that they have. But of course, Gentiles and Jews fear each other for different reasons. But they don't acknowledge it because Jews are allowed to, play their victim card, and they have the law that, allows them to call anyone an anti-Semite and a Nazi, and that shuts them up you know, nice and quickly, and so that's what they do.
um, yeah, well, but what I'm saying is that, um, even though from its inception, Judaism doesn't have good intentions for Gentiles. The problem is that most Jews are like worker bee drones in this. They're not necessarily, thinking too hard about it or too directly involved in it. And the Gentiles abuse them. So they abuse the average Jew. And so the average Jew kind of turns against the society because all these Gentiles are against him or her and have abused him or her. And then they either become malicious or they want to change society. And so they become revolutionary. And so it becomes in the Jews' best interest to change Gentile society because they perceive as though the Gentiles are hostile. But the only reason the Gentiles were hostile in the beginning was because I don't think it was necessarily that they do have qualms with the Jews for doing certain things, but I think a lot more of it is about intuition. So,
Yeah, people always fear more powerful people who are smarter than they are, who are above them. So, like, if they're foreign and they have a foreign religion that actually says that their own religion, i.e., Christianity, is idolatrous, then they're going to double hate them. And his history has shown, or this, blood libel and, all kinds of persecution. It's like, yeah, but we want them because they'll lend us money and they know how to operate the banking system to, finance our wars and finance government borrowing, and so we kind of need them. And, it's kind of, I mean, I'd say, like the relationship of a drug user and a drug dealer. And it's this kind of unholy alliance, and they need each other, but they hate each other, and they distrust each other, and they won't, they probably won't pass up any opportunity to do each other down. And I think it's important that people understand the nature of the relationship, and why it goes so deep that it's almost like a genetic inheritance for these people. Because, it's like, yeah, anti-Semitism is so bone deep that you probably can't ever erase it. But then, if you look at what how Jews are to each other, and their rules of behavior, it's like, well, we're supposed to love each other as our neighbor. It actually came from the Old Testament. It did come from Jesus. He wasn't the original, the first person who said it. And they had the scapegoat ritual that they would, find his goat, and then they'd throw it off a cliff as a kind of representation of all, the tribes, hatred for each other, because obviously, you live in a tribe, you've done each other down, you've said mean things about each other, as you may know, with, people have disputes with neighbors, and, bad stuff going on, and even in, families. They would have, long-standing sibling rivalry, and all kinds of shit going on, and so I think, it is. Okay, so they also say, envy is a deadly sin. The Ten Commandments, do not covet thy, thy neighbor's wife, ask, whatever. So obviously, we could. I mean, okay, I attribute all this hatred to envy, in that you have this idea that. I mean, some people are very, very, upfront about it. It's like, oh, she's got everything I want. I hate her. And they kind of joke about it, but it's also true that anybody who has more than you is an object of hatred, and you want to do them down. You want to know their status. You want to watch them fall. You might even want to trip them up because you hate them for having all the things that you want yourself. And,
Well,
and that's why envy is a deadly sin.
I don't think it's all envy. I mean, um, Jews have only become most of old European Jewry were very poor, backward, especially in Eastern Europe. Then they were kind of viewed as like slum dwellers, but they were still disliked. Um,
Yeah, because there is this instinct of disliking the foreigner. It's like if they do strange things, they look a bit weird. Who are they? What are they for? They just look creepy. The usual thing of seeing foreigners in your country that you don't quite like the look of. Well, one of the things people would say, I never liked the look of you. I never. The moment I saw you, I knew there was something wrong with you. That kind of thing, and it does go on, and of course it's all tied up in status, like this thing about Muslims, immigrant culture, Islam, whatever, and even if people don't acknowledge it, that they're saying that immigrant culture must be a lowly culture. It must be something inferior, something to be shunned because it's not quite us, and that sort of thing. And also, the other thing about the white man is that he is himself confused about his own identity, and so he's more likely to feel insecure, more likely to feel envy and fear and hatred and all those things, and it's a toxic mix. And of course, the Jews think, oh, but we're so frightened because there's always, we keep hearing about rising anti-Semitism. And actually, I think these groups are more powerful than the indigenous, ignored white working classes. Because in the UK, I don't know if you know this, it's like in the Labour Party, Labour's always being accused of Islam, anti-Semitism, and interestingly, the only other party we're talking about, is the Conservative Party, and they're being accused of Islamophobia. It's quite neat, isn't it, the way things have turned out for the minorities. And of course, after the election, when Boris Johnson won such a handsome majority, it's like, oh my God, the cabinet is full of Asians. It's full of Indians. So
well, I
I
mean,
don't know what the white person
Jews.
feels.
Oh, the thing is that Jews have this advantage in that the dislike for them can also be chalked up to the fact that they're foreigners and that they come from a different place and all of this kind of stuff. So that occults a lot of things. That not that that's not true, it is true. I my understanding of the whole situation comes from there was a rabbi named Rabbi Harry Wotton, Waton, and he wrote a book called A Program for Jews. Um, Let me find it one second. Let me just get it. In that book, he basically um, brought anti Semitism down to intuition. He said that the non Jews have an intuitive sense that the Jews are nefarious for them. He was saying, now at the time, he was saying that Jews were responsible for communism. This was in I think 1930. It was before the war ended, 1939. So he was saying in his book, he was saying that Jews were responsible for communism. And hold on, I'm posting it in the link right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly denying it because, the thing about being Jewish is that people are always making category errors. It's the same thing with the Muslims. It's like, oh, these Asian brewing gangs who are mostly Muslims. You know, do uh, it's this idea that they're doing it because they're Muslim. Or you don't really care why they're doing it. It's that
Well, no,
they
but
did it
That's
and they're
Islam
Muslim,
has
double, triple angry at them.
Islam has Islam, but no, Islam has a culture and a history of that sort of behavior. So
Oh,
you
sorry,
can
what sort of behaviour exactly are you talking about?
well, Muhammad and his men, they traded women as slaves.
Well, just slave trading in slaves. White people did that. I mean, they did that to the Africans. That's why America's, has such a significant black. It's like everybody's, any country. It's an institution. So you win a war, you take slaves from the defeated country. The black people did it to the Africans did it to each other and sold them
Well,
on to European slave
but
traders. I mean, it's so everybody's guilty of it, and somehow it becomes, oh, but it's Jews, it's white people, it's whatever. Why don't we just sort of look at history to see how normal the practice was? I mean, the Romans did it. I mean, their empire died because it was all slave labor, and then there was no reason for the white working classes to exist anymore. A bit like now. It's like there's no point training our working classes. We'll just import people from abroad who are already educated and to come and do the jobs that nobody here wants to do. So, of course, if you were, ex-working class and now only claim welfare, then you have no purpose, and of course your politicians won't care about you because you're just there to claim labour, and maybe occasionally you might vote for them, but, it's very hard to get you to do anything, so they'll just ignore you completely. And that's why they favour Muslims, because it's like, great, I'll just go to the mosque and I get the mosque elder to support me, and the mosque elder will tell everyone who attends that mosque to vote for my party. So great, this is the great way to campaign rather than go and ask individual, members of the formerly working classes to vote for them, and they don't even have a community centre because they don't go to church, and if you go to pubs, you don't even know if they're registered. It's like, yeah, just go to the mosque because it's easier to get votes that way. We have to think of how the political system works here, and who is useful to the politician soliciting votes. That the white working classes have no use. They have no role because they're no longer working. They're just claimants of the welfare state, and none of their leaders actually pointed out to them. They just say, oh, yeah, it's the Jews to blame. It's the Muslims to blame because, they've arrived in such huge numbers and you don't like them. And they don't tell them the truth. It's like, you don't have a purpose anymore because you don't work. And you don't even want to. And even if you wanted to, the schools you go to are such shit that you won't be fit to do anything when you leave school anyway. Except drug dealing and stabbing and getting stabbed. These politicians, they don't give a damn. It's like, as long as they can just sort of say, I'm an MP, I get, I can claim my expenses, they don't care. And then if you ask them, it's like, well, what can I do? What do you expect me to do anyway? Because I have no power. I might be in the cabinet, for a while, and then they'll kick me out, and then I'm back on the backbenches, and I have no power, so why are you looking at me? But then, okay, then you go right to the top, and we can remember, if you've been following, like Theresa May, when she was, for the few years that she was in power, there was no point asking her about anything because people just assumed she wouldn't be there for very long, and indeed she wasn't. So even when you actually nominally have somebody in charge, people know that it's not even worth asking them anything. So in this sort of situation, everybody can only look after their own interests, and look after their own patch, and they won't be caring about the greater good. But if you're going to blame, Jews for this kind of thinking, well, you would be wrong. And I think, if they did really introduce a no-hide laws, if they were really, really, really prepared to argue for it, then I think life in Gentile nations would improve. But these Chabad rabbis, it's like they're not really getting the idea. I mean, they actually they're stupid enough to think that there'll be enough Gentiles going to trust their religion to be administered by Jews. I mean, there's already Islam. Why would any Gentile be soft in the head enough to think, okay, I'll submit to my religion for you, and you can sentence me to death and
Well,
whatever. It's so
I'll tell you
crazy.
why. Claire, first thing, just so you know, OV can come on if you want.
Okay, do you want him on?
Sure, have him on. But the thing is that ex-Christians are a lot more likely to become Noahides than they are to become Muslims because in the
Because they
Bible,
hate Muslims too. Because
no,
no
but in
hide
the
is this
Bible,
sort of
there's
new
the
thing.
prophecy. The prophecy in the Bible is that the knowledge of God will come out of Zion, and that there's that very special, very well known scripture where it says the whole people of the world will grab the Israelites by their shirt tails and say like, give us your knowledge, or
Yeah,
whatever.
but
So there's
These Jews don't even know their own thing anymore because they've been, it's like, you know, does anybody even think like, maybe Gentiles should apologize to Jews for corrupting their morals?
well,
It's
okay.
like,
I agree with you. See, the thing is that everyone blames the Jews may use liberalism, they may use communism, they may use forms of conservatism, they may use banking is a different story because I think there's Duvid at least says that there I know in the Bible you're not supposed to uh, put a lot of interest on a Jew's loan, but it's okay to do it for an outsider, and you have to give up a Jew's you can't keep interest over a Jew for more than 7 years, something like that. I don't
yeah,
want to see it
Jubilee.
towards.
They have to forgive debt and release slaves, and they don't do that. That's why they kept getting kicked out of Russia because it's like
No, but they don't need to relieve debt for non-Jews every 7 years. It's just
no,
supposed to
no,
be
they're supposed to do that, for non-Jews, and when
no,
they
not for non-Jews. That the giving up the debts every 7 years is only for other Jews. Gentiles,
no,
there's
they're not supposed to practice usury on each other, but they can practice usury on Gentiles. So
yeah.
this applies to Gentiles, and I'm just saying that all these religious people, Jews, Muslims, and Christians, they ignore their own rules. And now we're so used to ignoring our own rules that we think it's a virtue to ignore these rules. I mean, I've been talking to a Jew and it's like, oh, but we believe in all these things, but we don't punish them. And aren't we clever for having these laws that say death to sodomites and idolaters and blasphemers, but not really carry it out? Aren't we clever? And oh, these Muslims are so crude and so inhumane because it really they really take it literally. They're so crude, and it's
Well,
like
here, this is the
it's
way.
crazy.
This is the way I put it. The thing is that Jews adopt whatever the Gentiles have going on and then they use it for their own ends. In the Bible, when the Jews went to Egypt, when they were first welcomed, Joseph was all the way at the top of the government. He didn't create that government, the Egyptian government, but he was put in charge of basically the banking system. He was put in charge of the treasury. And what he did was as the money came into the treasury, he never put it back out into circulation. So eventually all the money dried up. And then he said, well, give me all your land and all your animals and everything in payment, and I'll give you food. And that's how the Jews and Egyptians of the Egyptian royalty got all the land under them. Now, the Egyptian system was Gentile, but the Jews knew how to rig it for themselves. The same thing happened in the Book of Esther. where the Jew Mordecai gets close to the Gentile king and he plays inside the Gentile court. He was acting like a Gentile, but he was subverting what's Gentile. Same thing with liberalism. I don't believe Jews created liberalism.
No,
I mean, I think liberalism goes back to the Greeks, in my opinion, were
well, it came with the
liberal.
French Revolution when that term was coined. Liberty, equality, fraternity. That came from the French Revolution.
I know, and I don't. I can't believe. I think. I mean, to say that every participant at the top of the French Revolution, every thinker, every person who came out with anything that was significant was Jewish or either paid by Jews or whatever. I don't really subscribe to those type of theories.
No,
I
no, but
think
the French king was in debt. That was the thing. He was fighting all these wars to try and, put a spanner in the works for the British, the American War of Independence. It's like, yeah, I mean, at the time, um, France was, the greatest land power. It was, the biggest nation on Europe. In Europe, I mean, because Germany was nothing, it was just, a bunch of, feuding feudal states and prince, and dukedoms. So there was nothing so France was the continental power, and it wanted to stop Britain from, doing all that stuff. So it was up to its ears in debt, and that was a problem. So they couldn't, it's like they just kept taxing the peasants while the Catholic Church is and its corrupt priesthood, didn't have to pay anything. So, those were the seeds of the French Revolution. Misgovernment and a sense of, injustice. So so so
just so
so
you know, Ov is looking for the link.
I know, but he'll just come and he'll just interrupt. I do kind of want to make my point about
Okay.
the, how the French Revolution happened, and of course, we should always be a little suspicious of anybody cleverer than us, and but the thing is, if we're so stupid that any foreigner with a bit of two brain cells to rub together think we're stupid, then we should change our system. And I'm saying our system is stupid. It's unbelievably stupid. And I do I talk to white people and they think you know I'm afraid that foreigners do think white people are getting stupider. I talk to my relations. It's like, wow, white people are so stupid now. They don't know anything. It's this kind of thing that I do hear. Of course, they'll be too polite to say it to your faces, but I get it. You know,
Well, but
so
do you really think that I mean, so you're saying that the way Western systems are set up, they are uh, easy to manipulate by Jews. Do you think that Islam?
anyone. It's like the Nigerian scammer. It's like people think black people are stupid. These Nigerians are not stupid because they scam everyone, including the Chinese. And I kind of worked out how they did it because it's like they're just going to pretend to be black and stupid, but really they're so clever. And then you think, oh, you're doing them a favor, you're helping them, they're so stupid, whatever. And then they scam you. And it's like the damsel in distress kind of scam that Russian, attractive Russian women or people pretending to be attractive Russian women do, So, it's all, these scam artists that they kind of know the psychology of their target and these are they trick you, because they just do things to confirm your prejudices, and then they trick you. So, and of course, it's stupid to think that you're naturally more clever than another person because of your race, or your class, or whatever. You
And
know,
you think that Islam is going to protect us from all this?
I'm saying that at least we won't have a system of encouraging stupid people to impose their stupidity on the rest of us. And this is what I'm afraid is happening, and this is what is happening when you allow women to just impose their neurosis. There are a lot of neurotic women who are easily triggered and mentally ill, and then they change their minds all the time. They can't make it. It's like you it's a knock-on effect of everything. You allow one thing, and then you have to allow the whole thing that keeps the first thing going, and then you're all kind of mortgaged up to the hilt and into that ideology, and then there's so much stuff that stops you from admitting it. It's like, wow, we were so stupid. No, we couldn't be so stupid. And it's like, yeah, you were, and you just got to admit that the whole thing is stupid. And I know I can't even get anyone to debate it because they don't want to admit that they've been so stupid. It's like democracy is stupid, and Christianity was wrong because it's failed. That's why all these, that's why most people in the West are not Christian, and that's why they're always complaining about Jews and Muslims who've just sort of apparently come out of nowhere and are doing better than them in their own countries, and that's what's driving them crazy. And it's like, well, it's that's gone wrong, and say, oh no, democracy is the best system that that we can possibly have. And I say, but look at history. It didn't last very long in Rome, in ancient Greece. It's like, oh, but we don't care. We'll get away with it because of our magic white skin, and we're so special. And it's like, I don't know, it's just talking, to a bunch of inmates in a lunatic asylum.
Well, I think the issue is that we have two different um, um, Jews and Gentiles, Jews and at least Christian Western Gentiles have two different systems and way of approaching life. And I think that the Jewish system is a lot more about right here, right now, this world, how to take advantage of this world. And I think that the Jewish theology and ideology naturally puts Jews up on top, whether they're trying to do this or not. And I
Why,
think
why do
that
you find it so shocking? It's like, yeah, Jews because of Judaism. It's like, yeah, people in the tribe. We gotta look after people in our tribe first. And it's like, of course. So if you formed your religion, I'd be surprised if you considered people outside your group first. You would have your own in group preference, and this is the whole thing about you know different religions. It's like all these different religions are kind of closed systems. It's like, obviously Christians will favor Christians above anyone who isn't Christian, and Muslims the same, and Jews the same, and, any other religion. It's like, they all think that they're better than the others, and if they didn't think so, they would have converted. They would have, been the other thing. So, the fact that you are Hindu means that you think Hinduism is better than all the rest, even though you're polite enough, I suppose, to not say so. But obviously you're only a Hindu because you think it's better than, all the other religions.
yes, that's what I mean. That's what everyone who believes, who maintains a religion. But I mean, just because two religions are, I think that Hinduism, um, Christianity, Western Christianity is built in such a way that it's hard to um, buck to not naturally be exploited by Judaism. I think Islam, it's a little bit harder for it to be exploited by Judaism. Hinduism has, I don't think it's ultimately exploitable by monotheists, but certainly it has a hard time defending itself from monotheists, at least at this time. The only difference between Hinduism and the other religions is that Hinduism is fluid enough to totally evolve and create an immune system against it, whereas the other three religions are a little bit more set in stone. And so their evolving and mutating capabilities are limited. So I think that's why in the end Hinduism will come out on top. I think we're just waiting for the right immune cell to be born. Um,
But
but
don't you
it all
see?
goes back. It all goes back to the fact that I like what Rabbi Harry Watton said, is that Jews intuitively, no, non-Jews intuitively understand that Judaism is a threat, not one, because Judaism is built in a way that it can exploit Western Christianity. And just if you read their scriptures, I mean, the first thing that turned me off against Jews were their scriptures. And everyone says, oh, well, they don't live like their scriptures, and their scriptures aren't relevant today, and they don't practice and they don't follow that. But that's the basis. And what did they think of non-Jews in their scriptures? How did these people behave? What was their modus
Okay,
operandi? Like,
which verse that in the Old Testament did you take exception to?
well, obviously the ones that are all about killing idolaters, but there was also a lot more sneaky things, like the story of Esther and how Joseph took control of Egypt by crashing the economy. Um, there's other more devious things that they did, but they obviously they're the really Jews are the first ones that came in and really, really enforced monotheism and said it's us versus the world. Before it was just some god versus another god. It wasn't one god versus all god, everyone. The Jews came in and said, well, we're against everyone. So they
But actually,
started with,
this is an idea that first came. Tutankhamun. He wasn't he the one who said, well, all these the Egyptian pantheon. I'm gonna scrap that, and I'll just we'll just worship Aten, and I'll be the priest, the high priest to the sun disk and all that. And so monotheism came from ancient Egypt, but obviously it was a cold idea. There were so many vested interests, with priests of Isis, Osiris, and all the other ones, and people just liked their variety of deities. So when Tutankhamun died, everything just went back to what it was before. So even a pharaoh could change things until there was a more seductive idea, which came from Abraham, which is that yeah, there's one God, but this God is compassionate. He knows our minds and hearts, and he cares about us, and occasionally answers our prayers. And
no, but he favored one people over another. The thing is about Judaism is that there's only one God of the universe,
yeah,
but he favors a certain people.
well, not necessarily favor. It's like there are lots of Jews
Well,
who
he's
said,
chosen. He's
oh yeah,
chosen
yeah,
a
but they okay. This is the purpose that I see that Jews serve. It's like I'm sure there are a lot of Jews saying, well, why couldn't I be born a Gentile? I don't really hold with the all the dietary restrictions and observing the Sabbath, but obviously in order to kickstart the whole thing, he had to start with someone. So the Jews and Israel were his pilot scheme. Okay, and then out of Judaism came Christianity, and Islam incorporated, synthesized Judaism and Christianity, and so there is now a revelation for Gentiles, while previously, before the Quran, that there was only one divine scripture, and it was a Torah. But obviously it wasn't enough, because the New Testament is nothing at all. It wasn't even, nobody's claiming it. Christ wrote it, and it was all letters, written by Paul and Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, and there is no unity of authorship. While the Quran is like, yeah, it's God. It's God talking to you. God talking to Mo. And and this is all the stuff you're supposed to do and not do, and it's very clear. And this is obviously the Gentile version of the God.
Well, there's a reason why there's a difference between anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. People don't accuse Muslims of being this self-centered elite um, group who care more about their own interests than everyone else. The thing is that Muslims are looking to convert. They want the whole world to become Muslim, whereas the perception about Judaism is that they want to remain Jews and they want the rest of the world to be something else and to be subservient to them
Yeah, yeah,
as
but they might want that, but they're not going to get everything their way, will they? I mean, I'd be, there's some, converts like John Gishler who say, oh, let's, all become Jews, and And my position is that, well, actually, if I were Jewish, it's like, well, if I were Jewish, I'm in an exclusive club. If you're an exclusive club, you don't want everyone to join. You want, only the right people to join. So, it doesn't make sense, because, the Jews would lose their identity. Imagine if it could happen that everybody became Jewish, then they no longer be God's chosen people. So, so that's not the right idea either. So, yeah, have a few Jews, in Israel. It's only a small piece of land, but maybe it'll get bigger with Greater Israel. But there is a kind of idea of a social experiment which is yet to happen, because the area of Greater Israel has been defined in the Torah. In 2050, that area will contain about 100 million people, and of course, Jews will be the minority, you know. They're going to, have to think of something else if they want to acquire that piece of territory peacefully. And if they're going to do it, in accordance with divine law, then they would have to live as a theocracy. And there are only two kinds of theocracy that they can choose from, and that would be a Torah theocracy would be so outlandishly harsh that they wouldn't be able to deal with it, or the more realistic Sharia standard kind of theocracy. And of course,
Well, the
that
thing
would
is
be
that
the
they
way
don't.
to
The thing
get
is
the
that they
out.
can go halfway. They do it all the time. They have a chief rabbinate that has control over marriages, divorces, and adoptions in Israel. The chief rabbinate makes proclamations that only a Sanhedrin should, such as accepting a Gerdashov, which is a Noahide and who officially resides within the land of Israel. They don't need to go full-blown Torah theocracy in order to start pushing their agendas. They can do it incrementally, as they're doing it now. I
But you were
think,
saying that all these Hindus who were wanting the Jewish seal of approval, they want to be considered no-hide. So
well, not all. No, no, no. First of all, 99% of them have been deceived. When the chief rabbinate told them they were not idolaters, they didn't know about all the stipulations about the Noahide laws and that they're actually idolaters in practice and which beliefs are actually idolatry and which aren't. Um, they didn't know about all that. So once it's explained to them, I think you're going to get a very different uh, understanding of that proclamation. Um,
yeah, but
but
because you have this kind of tension. It's like, well, we're not really good enough, but we want to be good enough, and then and of course there is this. Some of them want to say that oh, everyone, any decent nation is no hide really, and then there'll be a different faction of rabbis saying no, 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 you can't say that the idolaters or sodomites or whatever. You can't call them no hide. There is a minimum moral standard, and we must uphold it. It's what we were chosen to do, and so within the rabbi community, I suppose, that there's a whole lot of disagreement, and they're not united. I mean, that is the thing. You get different Jews saying opposite things to us. So we don't really know what's happening, and it might be not. Actually, it would be great if they had a pope, so we can just go to the top man and say, "Hey, what do you think about this or that?" And he'll just say, "I say yes, I say no, or whatever," and then you get your answer. But now it's impossible. It's like, ooh, there's the Ashkenazi community and the Sephardi community, and there's the Yemenites and the Bukharians, and they don't agree, and they're not even the same race, and so you can't deal with them either. There's no one in charge, and they don't want to be. They kind of sort of, oh, I have to say something, but I just have to go through the motions, and because if I say it too loudly, people will get angry. So I'll just say it in Hebrew, so nobody hears what I say. I don't know if you know that the chief rabbi of the British Commonwealth, Chief Rabbi Mervis of the UK. he was rebuked by Rabbi Sternbach of Israel, and he was saying, and he's London born, and he's saying, stop with the LGBT handbook for Jewish boys' schools and girls' schools. We're not supposed to be collaborating with them on this kind of thing. And then there was this Rabbi Gabriel Krautz who said Jews should give up their lives, to defend against this abomination. So you will find, one Jew for any view that you can care to think of, and they all say different things. So it's like they're useless too, because there's no supreme authority, even
Well,
amongst
there's no
Jews.
supreme authority in Islam either.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why we're in the state where we are. It's like so everybody can say yeah, but no, but yeah, but no, but yeah, and nobody knows what's happening. Nobody dares to do anything because they don't know what the hell is happening. So nothing is done, and then in the meantime, because the Jews are not doing their job, things are gonna get much worse. Because there are all these sort of little rules that they have. I mean, Passover is coming up, and I don't know. I mean, I'm quite interested in what they do. So for Passover, they're supposed to get rid of their hametz, which is their leavened bread. So they have to get rid of their pizza, their flour. It's like they have to. They really have to. They have to sell it if they don't want or actually destroy it. And you think, wow, why do you have to do this crazy thing? And these Jewish housewives, they have to clean their really, I guess it's probably, it's spring cleaning time. So spring clean your house and get rid of all your hametz. And I used to wonder why they did this crazy thing, and then you realize actually what do you do if you're Jew with this sort of enormous granary? If you if you were a baker, I mean you can't destroy all your hametz, but you're meant to, and you'll be cursed if you don't. So what they do is like we have to get out of there. What should we do? Oh, we can sell it to a Gentile and then buy it back again. We'll sell it to them for $1 or £1 or whatever, and then after Passover we buy it back from them again. And obviously, most of the time it works. The Gentile, just gives it back, or say thanks very much for a whole granny full of wheat. I'm gonna keep it. Thanks for selling it all to me for $1. And so you can see now that if they allowed the morals of the Gentile to deteriorate, then they'll end up not being Jewish, because it sort of they'll always exist, I imagine, because God has put them there for a purpose, but He can easily make them suffer and remain in existence. So there are quite a few interesting theories about how the Jews were before Hitler went crazy, and kicked them out and put them in camps and stuff, and it was because they assimilated too much, and it drove the Germans crazy. It's like, don't assimilate. You're frightening us, because when you assimilate, you do the things that we don't want to do. That we don't even want our own people to do. You do it sort of more and harder and wider and deeper, and it's scary and whatever. So they don't actually know their own power. I mean they and so that's why you get these communists who are Jews. Because once you take away their Judaism, and a lot of them had to assimilate in order to lead a reasonably okay life. They still have their genetic inheritance as Jews, which I think is greater intelligence, and so whatever idea they get into their heads, they're gonna take it further and harder and deeper and wider than others, and with bad consequences. So I think that's their problem, and of course. My idea is to put them on a register so people know what's happening, because the Gentile finds it very disconcerting to talk to somebody that they think is one of theirs, and then suddenly they realise they're talking to a Jew, and then they're going to be accused of anti-Semitism or whatever. So I don't know. I think that is the problem. That possibly they don't know their own strength, but on the other hand, they consider themselves victims, and and they play the victim card, and this angers the Gentile even more. And of course,
Well,
the
yeah,
other
I
thing is that
mean
they
that's
assimilate,
what
and then
they.
they marry, and then they have broken marriages, and their ex spouses really hate them. And I know a few anti-Semites who say, I really hate Jews, and it's like, oh, but and your ex-wife was a Jewess, yeah, yeah, and or my, so I think that is a problem as well, and they don't seem to realize. Sorry, you were going to say something.
Uh, no, no, I wasn't gonna say anything. I don't know if you want to bring OV on
Yeah, yeah.
now.
I was just going to say that. I thought now that I've finished my spiel, he can come on.
Yeah, I know we were. I know he'll derail the conversation and bring it into something,
Yeah, I know.
trollish.
Which is why I kind of wanted to finish before letting him on. Yeah, so OV has a Jewish stepfather. So I mean, I think that's kind of explains everything about his attitude towards Jews. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong link. So yeah, and Brundle, married to a Jewess.
Yeah, I know his child is half Jewish.
He's actually Jewish because you're already Jewish if just your mother is Jewish. So he has to worry. Oh, he has to probably double, triple, quadruple make sure that it's brought up Christian, or feel he's lost control, and all these little things, they sort of slowly eat away at people and drive them mad, and that's why Brundle's so neurotic, really. Anyway, I've posted the link to OV now, so he'll be with us very soon.
Um, yeah, I mean, I personally think it would be better for everyone and easier for everyone if Jews didn't. I mean, I got so much flack. I always get so much flack when I say that okay, like Jen is in the room right now. She says the definition of liberalism came out of the French Revolution. Because I don't, when I say liberalism, okay, I'm not saying leftism. That's a different thing. Leftism and liberalism are two different things. Leftism is anything that comes out of Karl Marx. You don't have to be a social liberal to be a leftist. I mean, you could be, I don't think there's anything in the Communist Manifesto that says anything about not, being racist or sexist or, well, I don't know. I
Well, you're not supposed to because
think
the whole idea of communism is global. They talked about international communism, and this was the battle between Stalin and Trotsky because Stalin was saying, look, we just can't, you know, make the whole world communist. We'll just get
yeah,
into a war with everyone. So we'll just start at home and build up our own nation before we think of turning everyone else into we need to consolidate, and that's basically it. And then it becomes national socialism,
okay. Okay, when I say liberalism, I'm talking about classical liberalism. I'm not
which is
necessarily.
conservatism, which is really confusing. Because people like Nigel Farage say they're classical conservatives, classical liberals. So even these terms, they don't mean anything because they've shifted so much that nobody even really knows what they mean, and there never was a handbook for these meanings anyway. Really,
Well, polytheism was a liberal endeavor in that everyone was allowed to believe in their own God and do their own thing, and nobody was really persecuted for it. And there was a different array of social behaviors you could engage in without necessarily being um, chastised. Polytheism is pluralism, so it's a lot more what I would call liberal. Maybe whatever, I don't know what the word is then. If liberalism means what came after the French Revolution and it doesn't mean classical liberalism, I'm talking about something that freedom of thought, um, whether I know people don't like it, but democracy, um, ending slavery.
Okay,
Um,
I understand, just sort of being kinder and uh, going away from the, traditional theocracy and the Ten Commandments and the Old Testament kind of laws. I do get it. And
well, look, the whenever we say conservatism, we often mean the Bible. At least in the West, when we say conserve, we mean the Bible. We're not talking about capitalism. It's not, you know, it's that might have entered it. But the Gentiles were anti-Torah, anti-Torahism, the anti-Torah lifestyle, anything anti-Torah comes from the Gentiles. Now, liberalism as we know it, with homosexuality and women's rights and polytheism and all that stuff, that's anti-Torah. I'm not people. I think the Jews either inadvertently or advertently use Gentile thinking for their own purposes, or Gentile
Yes.
endeavors for their
Yes.
own purposes, but they did not invent these anti-Gentile ideas. Like the one thing, I got into this big fight with this guy. You know who Shabtai Tzvi is, or Shabtai Zevi?
no.
Let me just find him really quick. Okay. Um,
Okay, while you're finding him really quick, hello, Ovi, but I just want to finish my point about polytheism and inclusiveness and all that. I don't know if you know that the Roman Empire did that sort of thing. It would say, "We've invaded your country now. Which are your gods? Okay, we'll take your god and we'll put it in our pantheon of gods, and we'll just add your god to our pantheon, and we'll all worship it together, and we'll be one
No,
big happy
that's
family."
no,
That's
that's
how
wrong.
they did do it, and that was
No,
how Mecca
no,
did
no.
it
Other
too.
gods were not. I mean, you could say that maybe about the Greek gods, right? Because I mean, Roman religion is basically based upon Greek gods. But beyond that, um, it kind of really depended on what kind of status you had within the Roman Republic or the Roman Empire. Like if you were a client state and you still had nominal control, you still had your own king, and you were basically still, you would be considered a Roman ally, right? And you're still kind of running your own kingdom. Then you would basically just be allowed to continue having your own religion, but they
A
would not be
tributary
necessarily
state.
put.
A tributary state, right? You pay
Yeah, yeah.
tribute, and
Don't know
they,
that.
they leave you alone. But Mecca, before Muhammad, had his Islamic revolution, it was a place of pilgrimage, and everybody went there because all their gods were there, so they could just go have one big happy party. And the satanic verses was this moment of temptation for Muhammad, because they were having a problem with Muhammad, and they thought they could just sort of bribe him and say, "Look, Mo, how about this? We're going to include your Allah, and we're going to make a statue of him, and we're going to put him there amongst all the other
No,
ones.
that
How
never
about
happened.
it, man?"
No.
And he said no.
Show me where a statue of Allah
Well,
was.
it was some bargain of this nature, and of course he rejected it. That was the point I was making. He'd say, "No, it's all got to go." And they went, "What? All idols?" And he says, "Yes, because they're worthless and they can't help or harm you, and they've all got to go." And that was when they lost patience with him and kicked him out. Because he was bad for business. It's like, well, what are all the problems going to come all the way and see? Nothing? Yeah, nothing. Because, that was a problem. It was bad for business, so they kicked him out. And the Romans had a similar system of like every time they invaded a country, they'll just add that, the god of that country they invaded to their pantheon.
No,
Yeah,
no, that never happened.
Well, you said it
Foreign
happened.
gods were never added to the pantheon.
Okay, but I'm not saying every, but you kind of get the idea of what I'm trying to say
well, they
about.
would allow them to be worshipped in the city, and they would allow temples to be erected to them in the cities.
Which is completely separate thing, right? And that's my point, right? I mean, there's still a clear separation between Roman religion and foreign religions, is the point.
Well, the original Roman pantheon was really the original Greek pantheon. I mean, it was like variations because the Greeks had Athena, who was the goddess of wisdom and war, and the Romans had Mars, the god of war. So, yeah, a few little variations here and there for particular purposes.
Right, but I mean to say that the Romans incorporated other cultures into their religion that's misunderstanding what they actually did.
Well, you said that there were different status for different states. So if you become a tributary state, then you would, have your own kingdom and you'll worship your own gods. But if you were completely invaded and the Romans just took over your land, then you'd be Roman administered.
Yeah, but they at that point it would be even worse because you would have to become Roman, right? And you would not be even allowed to have your own kind of culture, right?
Yeah, it depends on how badly you were defeated. Actually, it kind of reminds me of the jizya thing with the Quran. It's like, okay, we've invaded you. Would you like to become Muslim? No. Well, you could become a tributary state. So yeah, so you get to choose.
Well, it's okay, yeah, sure, you could. Yeah, you
Because
can make that
jizya
argument.
is a conditional tribute that you can avoid if you convert to Islam. So it sounds quite similar to the Roman arrangement that you just described.
Yeah, it's you can draw similarities if you want, sure.
No, I've just been finding, quite a few things, that came from Rome. I mean, a lot of, quite a lot of Quranic wisdom, it's reminiscent of Roman wisdom when they were being wise.
Yeah, well, basically, the only time that Rome and Islam had any kind of interaction with each other is, like way past the the height of the Roman Empire. We're talking
actually,
into when
Rome
it was
fell.
the East and the West, and we're talking more about the Byzantine Empire, right, which is basically based in Constantinople, and this is basically during the fall of the Roman Empire proper.
Yeah,
So I mean, but during the regular Roman Empire, the classical Roman Empire, if you will, it was not at all what you're describing.
my memory of events was that Rome fell and then Islam came into being. So and that was 650, I think.
Well,
that
Rome.
was when
Remember,
Muhammad was
Rome.
born, and,
Yeah,
and,
Rome.
and Rome
Rome
fell before
fell.
that officially.
Rome fell, but remember, the Eastern Roman Empire still lasted a lot longer than the Western Roman Empire.
Well, but the point that I'm trying to make is that the Romans, Jen and everyone tells me that we're not allowed to use the word liberal, but it was a pagan culture, which is liberal by its definition. I mean,
You mean inclusive, do you?
Inclusive, and the fact that you're allowed to be an atheist if you want. It's not like there's blasphemy or anything like that. It's not like they're telling you how you can't worship or how you have to worship. It's like they had secular laws, but the Roman religion wasn't a set of laws you had to follow.
Yeah, you just had to follow Roman civil law. civil law. I mean, it's the same with
Code.
China. It's like, if you're an empire, you can't sort of favor one particular race alone, because it's like, then if you're only favoring your people, then it's like, well, what about the 80% of your empire who aren't actually Romans or of that particular race? And you don't want to alienate all those people, because you're only a tiny minority. So one of the things about ruling an empire is that you have to be inclusive, because if you alienate the others,
No,
then they'll just walk
wrong.
away.
No, I mean, let's look at, for example, let's look at the Jewish-Roman wars. When Kaiser was dictator, he actually granted the Jews the ability, because previous to Kaiser, the Jews were not allowed to worship their god, like, within Rome, and then Kaiser loosened that, and it was pretty loose up until the point that the Jewish rebellions started happening. And once the Jewish rebellions started happening, and we're talking like the time of Titus Flavius, 70 A.D. this time. After the Romans went in and busted up the rebellion, busted up the Second Temple, then all of a sudden the Jews, because they were so troublesome, they lost any of the previous liberties that they had, just because they were such a pain in the ass. So no, it's not about, being an empire is not all about, just being inclusive for the sake of, having all of these different people.
No, well, the thing is that you can see that very idea that at first they were letting them have their own god. I mean, what do you want to call it? Liberalism or whatever? Like, okay, the point
Sure,
is that
yeah.
people accuse Jews of purposely being diverse and accepting and inclusive for the reason of destroying the empire by letting everything happen and anything happen, and any bad idea can come in here and flourish. But they didn't come up with that idea. I mean, the Torah is very, very strict about what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do, and it's not inclusive at all. It's very exclusive. So when the Jews do these types of things, they are simply taking cues from, they're using what the Gentiles created for their own purposes, whether they're doing it wittingly or unwittingly. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And I want to bring up Claire. I talked to you about that guy Sabotage Zevi. So I'm going to post his Wikipedia article in the link.
Mm-hmm.
I got into a fight with this guy because Sabotage Zevi basically was a Satanist, or he declared himself to be the Messiah, and I think he had 1 million followers back, in the 1600s, which was a lot of people back then. And he supposedly just flipped the Torah on its head and allowed orgies and debauchery and drunkenness and all this other different kind of stuff. And what I'm saying is that all that stuff, all the orgies and, let's break everything that the Torah says, that came from the Gentiles. It didn't come from him. But, then they get into this argument, well, it came from a Jew, it came from a Jewish mind, it's the inversion of Judaism, so therefore it's Judaism's fault, blah, 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 blah. No, Shabbatai Zevi was acting like a Gentile.
Wait, he was Jewish, though, in the beginning?
Yes.
I mean, he was born Jewish? Okay.
Yes, he was. He was born Jewish, and then he declared himself to be the Messiah, but he was like into all this like degenerate stuff. But that's not what I'm trying to say, is that him doing that's him acting like a Gentile. That's not. See, Jen tells me that my problem is I view Judaism as a religion and not as a race.
Oh, it's both, but yeah.
But I think it's clear as day that when the Jews are acting liberal, they're stealing what the Gentiles created. They're using it for their own purpose, but they're already stealing what the Gentiles created. I mean, we came up with all of this other kind of stuff. The only stuff that they came up with the Torah.
Yeah, and we have to keep in mind, right? The Torah is very clear about how you treat other Jews versus how you treat the goyim, right? It's very, very conservative when they're talking about Jews interacting with other Jews. But once you kind of cross over into the Jew Gentile or Jew goyim divide, yeah, then anything goes. And I mean, yeah. So yeah, even if white people did create liberalism, I mean, who knows? Maybe Jews had a hand in it as well.
I'm sure there were some Jews that were thinking, but it's. I mean, this came out of Western countries. That if Jews were also involved, it happened simultaneously. It wasn't like all the Jews came together and wrote all these liberal books, and then the Gentiles started reading them, and then it passed out. No, Gentiles were just as involved in creating these books as Jews. These ideas.
Yeah, and to kind of go back just one step, when the Jews were going through the whole Roman Empire thing, they didn't have necessarily the ear of the emperor or anything like that, right? Whereas, so you can't really say that they were trying to undermine the empire. They were, at that time, they were more so just trying to do what they thought was just for their people. Whereas today, where Jews are basically, they have the ear of the president, they run all the banks and the media and, Hollywood, all this kind of shit. Now you can actually say that, yeah, they are trying to use liberalism in order to screw over the goyim, or to make the goyim, into their cattle.
But a lot of them are not doing that wittingly. I mean, a lot of them just happen to be actually liberal. I mean, of course, there's tons of Jews that are anti-Israel, that are anti-Zionist. I mean, it's
sure, yeah. Well, yeah, that's kind of the thing where it's called drinking your own Kool-Aid, right? Or buying your own bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is something that many more conservative Jews have actually spoken out about. Like Sheldon Adelson, for example, has talked about how the fact that so many Jewish women are marrying Gentile men, white guys. That's a big problem because it's kind of diluting the Jewish blood, and the Jewish culture and all this kind of shit. So yeah, I mean, they've kind of screwed themselves over in what they're doing.
But that idea, right? They did, but that idea of intermarrying outside of, I mean, that's not. It didn't come from Judaism proper. I mean, I guess Jewish culture and Jewish people can incubate things that were not found in the religion. And like people always say that Jews are more homosexual and Israel is one third bisexual and all that stuff.
I see what you're saying now. Okay.
But
yeah.
But Islam is also very homosexual, and I think that having a culture that is so vehemently anti-homosexual, I think actually encourages homosexuality in the culture. I think the more you try to suppress homosexuality, the more homosexuality you're going to have in your culture. Judaism was a very anti-homosexual culture, so I don't think that it's all that surprising that it's gone in the other direction.
I'm not sure if it really was. I mean, dude, rabbis sucking baby dicks. I mean, it's pretty homo, wouldn't you say?
Well, I don't think that. I mean, they just do it for like 5 seconds in front of like the parents. So I don't know.
I mean, call it what you will. Call it what you will, but looks looks pretty bad to me.
But
yeah, I'm kind of making a little bit of a joke, but yeah.
No, but I'm sure like this. Okay, the thing is that this Sabbatai Zevi, who was like this wanting to be a messiah, and he basically inverted Judaism. Yeah, he did invert it. You couldn't have gotten to his inversion of Judaism without Judaism. But okay, in a way you can kind of blame Judaism for it, because if there were no Judaism, there would be no anti-Judaism, and so therefore his whole cult could never have existed. But
yeah, I should be clear. I don't blame Judaism proper necessarily, right? It's not that um the well, I guess it kind of depends on how you look at it, right? To me, it's more about the ethnic divide, right? I mean, the Torah and the Talmud talk a lot about this, right? I already kind of mentioned it. It's okay to treat goyim um, more harshly than you would treat other Jewish family, right? And so it's not necessarily um, the Torah that's telling him to do it, like as in social codes. It's more just the ethnic divide between Jews and other people, right? Um, I mean, this goes into like the interest rates, usury, all this kind of stuff. Uh, I mean, it kind of depends on how you look at it. You could interpret that as being what the Torah says or what the Talmud says, but you could also look at it from a purely ethnic point of view. And keep in mind, we are dealing with psychological aspects as well, right? Where these Jews.
The Jews weren't the first people to come up with "let me treat my ethnicity better than yours." I mean, there's nothing necessarily specific about that to Jews. Look, I do believe a lot of things that people say about Jews. I do. But I think you're just going to get yourself stuck in a quagmire. That I only focus on the Noahide laws because it's the only thing that I can brand Jewish. Like liberalism, the Jews might use liberalism, but liberalism is not Jewish. I hate when people say that liberalism is Jewish. And we're not talking about the French Revolution. We're talking about acceptance, equality, democracy, that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, if I don't have any problem just focusing on the Noahide laws. I mean, that basically proves my argument just right then and there. I mean, the Noahide laws assert Jewish supremacy and kind of codify the whole idea of the goyim Jewish hierarchy, if you want
It
to put it
lays
that
it
way.
all out on the line, and it shows the way their thinking is. Like I said, that Rabbi Harry Watton said that the vast majority of anti-Semitism comes from intuition, where people intuit that the Jews have a negative agenda. It's not necessarily because they always see every little thing. It's just that they feel it in their gut that there's something not right, and their feelings are totally validated by this Noahide law. Because the thing is, you can always say, well, the Jews only are overrepresented in the banks because they're smarter, they're in Hollywood because they're more creative, this and that. You can always come up with an excuse. With this Noahide, you can't come up with an excuse. It's Jewish, 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 Jewish. You can't get away from its Judaism.
Well, let's be perfectly honest, right? You don't even have to know what the Noahide laws are to be able. I mean, call it intuition or call it just observation of Jewish behavior, right? If Jews are coin clipping, or if Jews are practicing usury, in countries that they're guests in, all of these things, all of these behaviors fall under the purview of what the Noahide laws are, even if the peasantry of those countries don't even know what a Noahide law is.
Well, a lot of the things that Jews do don't follow the Noahide agenda. It gets messy. It gets messy when you step outside the Noahide agenda, because there's a lot of non-Jews who are helping in this. There's a lot of non-Jews who are liberal who helped create liberalism or in the banking system. There's tons of non-Jews in the banking system. I mean, I think wasn't it only the Catholic Church that couldn't practice usury, but the Protestants could? Isn't part of the reason that there was so much
the Catholic Church was very against usury.
But what about the Protestants? Who let it back in? Claire always says, was it John Calvin?
Yeah, Calvin. Yeah, the Calvinists. Yeah, who were basically, I mean, they're an offshoot of an offshoot, right? Protestantism was formed by Martin Luther, who was very, very anti-Semitic, and I'm not actually sure what Martin Luther's concepts or ideas on usury was, but I would imagine he was not very accepting of it.
Right. So I mean, they're also one of the reasons that there was kind of a lot of support for anti-Semitism and especially involving the banks is that the Jews had replaced a lot of the Protestant banking families that owned the banks in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, yeah, this is where the I'm not sure how much you know about like banking history, but the church or the Bank of England rather, it was the first privately owned central bank, and it was established basically immediately after Cromwell let the Jews back into England. So yeah, I mean, yeah, and of course, you also have the Netherlands, where Jews basically created a large amount of their financial empire. Yeah, there is. Yeah, I mean the whole idea of Jews kind of usurping the financial power of Europe. Yeah, it goes back. I mean, some would say it goes back to the time of William the Conqueror, like 1100 AD. But yeah, I mean, Church of England, 1600s, or you could look at the Rothschilds during the Napoleonic era. The Rothschilds probably are the most famous and the most influential, I would say. But yeah, it all fits. Yeah.
So I just think I don't think we're ever going to get anywhere I don't know how they did it in Europe in World War II, how they got all these people. I mean, the Jews have been expelled from so many countries, obviously. So, but they weren't always expelled because they were spreading liberalism.
No, of course not. No. They more often than not, Jews were expelled just because they were acting like fucking assholes. Coin clipping and usury and all this kind of shit, or just generally being weirdo fucks. I mean, yeah, it's not necessarily, the Jews weren't expelled for just being Jews, right? Or I mean, well, I don't know. Kind of depends on your point of view. I mean, when you say it gets kind of like messy. I mean, you're absolutely right. Like when Jews have these beliefs, that they're the chosen people, they can treat people, other people differently, and then other people catch wind of this kind of like arrogant, high and mighty self-righteousness and coin clipping and doing all of this dastardly stuff. I mean, yeah, are they on one hand they're being expelled for Jewish behavior, but they're not being expelled just because they're Jewish, or are they? Right? That's it's. I mean, they both are and they aren't at the same time.
Some of them are, because if you're getting rid of all the Jews, I mean, obviously not all the Jews are coin clipping.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
So, I mean, yeah, a lot of them you're expelling them because they are Jews, but
there's
think
some
it's a
Jews
mistake.
who
I
are
think it's a
more
mistake.
assholeish than others. Yeah.
I think it's a mistake to claim that they created liberalism, and even when the people say that they created leftism, then they say Karl Marx was Jew. Karl Marx was a quarter Jewish, and his family had converted to Christianity. So I mean, so wouldn't the Jews only be a quarter responsible for that?
Wait, sorry, say that one more time.
People try to say that Jews created leftism because supposedly Karl Marx was a Jew, but he was only a quarter Jewish, and his family had converted to Christianity.
Well, some would say that a quarter Jew is enough. But I mean, liberalism existed before Marx, right?
What about left? Well, leftism did.
Leftism. I mean, define leftism.
Well, I think leftism is anything that comes out of Karl Marx. I mean, I don't know if there was any kind of communist ideology that was so put together before Karl Marx. I don't know. No, I don't know.
Well, here, let me put it this way. Here's an interesting thing. Do you know the first two countries in Europe that that allowed, or that kind of embraced the idea of a multicultural state, or I guess you could say the first three actually. Do you know which three of those were?
No.
France, England, and the Soviet Union.
Why the Soviet Union?
Well, yeah, that was a major tenet of Marxism. The idea that anyone can be part of a country, right? It was kind of the whole anti-national kind of aspect, right? The whole kind of anti-ethnic. Anyone can be a proletariat, right? Anyone
Yeah.
can be a good comrade. You know. And so yeah, when we talk about France, and this is why I'm always a little bit skeptical of people saying that it was the French that created the idea of liberalism, because like anytime I think of France, I think of that's what I think of, like the whole multicultural kind of idea, and it's it's a little, it hits a little bit too close to home, if you know what I mean.
Well, I don't believe, like some people say, I don't believe that every single ounce of the French Revolution was conducted by Jews. I don't believe that. I mean,
Who
obviously
was that? Who was the guy that was in charge of the Reign of Terror?
Robinoff or
Robespierre.
Robespierre.
What, wasn't he a Jew?
I don't know. How do you spell his name?
Robspierre, I think.
Maximilian. Oh, that's a Jewish name, isn't it? Maximilian.
Good question.
No, okay, no, I don't think he was Jewish. No.
Wait, no. Who am I thinking of? Uh, uh, who am I thinking of? Oh no, I'm thinking of someone else. Wait, what? Robespierre wasn't Jewish, but
No.
no, I'm thinking of. Oh no, he was an English guy. Oh, who was the English Jew? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. The English Jew in power. He like got into he was the first non-British guy that got into the aristocracy.
Not
Chat.
Disraeli.
Someone knows in chat.
Not Disraeli. You're not talking about him,
Disraeli,
right?
yeah, Disraeli. That's the guy. Disraeli was a Jew.
I'm sure there were Jews, and the thing is that I mean, like in the Book of Esther, you have the court Jew, right? He was a court Jew, and then through his intrigues, he eventually had like 70,000 innocent Persians massacred. Well, in that story, I mean, the Jews were entirely responsible for conniving and putting all this together. But the thing is this, look, in the French Revolution, there were a lot of non-Jewish people in the society that had really good reason to want to see the aristocracy toppled. A lot of people were really unhappy, and it wouldn't be all that, it's not all that difficult to come up for Gentiles, some Gentiles to come up with the idea, well, we need to get rid of the aristocracy. If everyone was unhappy, and hadn't America already had its democracy by that point? When was the French Revolution? When was the French Revolution?
I'm looking at history of the Jews in France right now from Wikipedia. If you want, I can read a couple paragraphs from this.
Yeah, sure.
The history of the Jews in France deals with the Jews and Jewish communities in France. There has been a Jewish presence in France since at least the early Middle Ages. France was a center of Jewish learning in the Middle Ages, but persecution increased as the Middle Ages wore on, including multiple expulsions and returns. During the French Revolution in the late 18th century, France was the first country in Europe to emancipate its Jewish population. So yeah, there you go. France was anti-Semitism has occurred in cycles, reaching a high level in the 1890s, as shown in the Dreyfus Affair, and in the 1940s under Nazi German occupation and the Vichy regime. But yeah. So like, if France is this hub of Jewish learning, right? Like, you can't tell me that there isn't any kind of Jewish influence in the ideas of liberalism.
I didn't say that there weren't Jewish influences, but even if there was Jewish influence, at least it's not influenced necessarily by scriptural Judaism. Judaism formal has nothing to do with that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I don't care about scriptural anything, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I care about what the Jews do, whether it comes from the Talmud or whether it comes from the Torah is basically irrelevant to me. What I care about is, is there shit going on, and are Jews responsible or partly responsible for that shit going on? Where it comes from, I don't care. All I care about is it's Jews doing it, and Jews are a problem, and we need to find a dare I say a solution to this problem. Yeah, you know what I mean?
I think that any other route is going to be very difficult. I think any other route than what I'm doing is going to be very difficult. I truly believe that, and I don't know if it's ever going to get you anywhere, because I mean, people have been trying this for centuries and they haven't gotten anywhere with it. I mean, everything that has been tried before, and it didn't work. And
well, now you're kind of
Nobody's
making.
tried secular Quranism, have they? Or putting them on a register.
See, it's funny that you pipe up now, Claire, because I was about to say you're making Claire's argument. Why don't we just let the Jews be in charge?
No,
I'm not saying that.
No, I'm not making that argument. I'm saying that's why, I mean, I focus so much on this Noahide law stuff, because if I got involved in all this other Jewish stuff, I mean, I would just go out into the fever swamps. I mean, it's a fever swamp. Once you start trying to combat the Jews in any other way, you're going out into a fever swamp.
What do you mean a fever swamp? I've never heard that before.
So many contradictions. So many Jews don't act like that. The Jews are divided. It didn't come out of Judaism. Look at all of these examples that don't fit your model. Judaism is a race. Judaism is not a race. It's genetic. It's not genetic. I mean,
no, wait. No, I mean, there's no argument about the genetics, right? I mean, Jews are a race. They have their own specific gene. I mean, the Sephardic and Mizrahi and Ashkenazi, they all have a You can like do a DNA test. I mean, Israel itself does DNA tests to tell if you're actually Jewish or not.
Well, okay, the thing is that my contention is that the Jewish religion captured a race. Judaism is not a race. Judaism is a religion that caught one genetic people. That's like, let's say that Catholicism was an exclusionary religion and it just so happened to capture the Italian race. Catholicism would still not be a race, even though all Catholics are Italians. Catholicism would not be a race.
No, I mean now we're getting cause and effect mixed up, right? I mean, the Jewish religion came out of the Jewish people, not the other way around.
Right, I've heard this argument before that there's something genetic inside the Jews that made them create that religion.
No, I mean it didn't make them. It's just the. I mean, it's just they were. I mean, now we're going back into way early times, right? These people out of the land of Canaan, and shit like this. I mean, these people were a tribe, and they created over time this religion called Judaism, and now we know these people to be the Jews.
No, well, I know, but people say that, okay, the Talmud is a lot newer, right? Like, people will say that it was because of their inherent genetic predispositions that the Jews wrote the Talmud, that it couldn't have come from another race because their race is predisposed. Just like people say the Germans were predisposed for Nazism and French were predisposed for, arts and stuff like
No,
that.
do you know how the Talmud came about?
The Talmud came out of, the Talmud started when the Jews went to Babylon. They learned a whole lot of new stuff and the religion changed a lot. And when they came back from Babylon, from how I understand it, there was a rift in Jewish society, and they wrote down the Torah. And some Jews were saying, "Well, this is what Judaism is," and then there were other Jews that were saying, "Well, all this stuff, how we mutated while we were in Babylon, all these traditions of the elders, that's also Judaism." And there was a disagreement, and then eventually the second class of people who had digested a lot of Babylonian ideas or Babylonian culture or whatever, wrote down the Talmud.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, when you say Jews are predisposed to certain belief, it's not that at all, right? I mean, yeah, the Talmud. You're exactly right about the Talmud. It came about because this rabbi disagreed with that rabbi, and the Talmud is basically just a book of rabbis arguing over, what is the true, beliefs of the Jews. Um, Disposed to believing one sort of thing or the other. It's more about just trying to understand, what is the truth of our religion and our people actually believe. And
Right.
so, yeah, I mean, there's,
Right.
I mean,
It
the
still
idea.
has it
Yeah,
still
go ahead.
has this anti-Gentile doctrine and the
Sure. Oh,
sneakiness
yeah,
to it.
definitely. Yeah, that came out of it, definitely. Yeah.
And it has this um it describes a very traditionalist, conservative society. Um,
On one hand, but on the other hand, it's very fast and loose with what they believe. Like I said, before, usury. How the differences in how you treat goyim versus how you treat fellow Jews.
yes. Yeah, right. Which is not necessarily all different from what other cultures were doing, but they just like codified it very well. Um,
I would say that they didn't codify it really well. I mean, it's like that. it's like that saying, you have two Jews in a room and you have, three different opinions or some shit like that, right? Have you ever heard that joke?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Jews, I mean, they're almost too smart for their own good. They just you get Orthodox Jews that believe in Israel, you get Orthodox Jews that don't believe in Israel. But the important point that I think is, like, at the end of the day, um Jews will always put Jews first, and to let them infiltrate other countries' positions of power, through lobbying, through banking, through whatever, is a huge problem. I mean, these people. I mean, and this is the kind of the whole point of, contrary to, I heard what Claire was saying earlier about the reason that Hitler wanted to get rid of the Jews was, or expel the Jews, was because they were assimilating too much. No, I mean, it's completely the opposite. The reason that Hitler had a problem with the Jews is because they don't assimilate. They just come into a society and they try to, bully it into following, doing what Jews want them to do.
So, what are you saying
Uh,
that
the biggest
the German
problem is
Jews
that
did?
the Gentile societies have not, well, Western Christian society has not been, it's not strong enough yet, or it hasn't found a way to be immune to this. In the Bible, it's very important. One thing that I always notice, that in the stories where the Jews take control of the society or get into the society, it's because of the inadequacy of the pagans. So if you remember in the book of Genesis, Joseph, the only reason he was able to become the Pharaoh's dream interpreter was because nobody else could interpret his dreams. And the same thing happened in Babylon with Daniel. None of the pagan priests could interpret the dreams. And then so he went to a Jew. And let's just say that maybe the Jew just gave him a better story, something more intriguing. You know what I mean? Maybe, I don't know why the king fell for Daniel's visions, but he did. A third example is in the book of Esther, before Esther became the queen. So he had a pagan queen, the King Ahasuerus, or whatever his name was. Uh, he was a drunk, and he was drunk one night, and he told his wife to go parade herself around in front of the party, and she wouldn't do it. So he got rid of her, and that's how his throne opened up to get Esther in. So I mean, the only reason that the Jewess was able to get in was because the king was a fucking useless piece of shit.
I'm sorry. I'm not understanding the point
I'm
that
saying
you're
that
making.
the real problem is that the Gentiles have a weakness.
Um. Well, I mean, everyone has weaknesses, right? I mean, I will agree with you that there is, among white people, um, for whatever reason. I mean, we can go into what those reasons are, but for whatever reason, yeah, the white people are. Actually, do you know who Alternative Hypothesis is?
He's a YouTuber?
Yeah. You know who he is?
No.
Yeah, he's like kind of a. Well, I mean, I wouldn't call him a Nazi or anything, but he's anti-Jewish. He's homosexual. Um, you might like him. He's he's like very very pro-white, and talks about nationalism and all this kind of stuff. I listen to him a lot. Um, uh, he it's Yeah, I mean, white people do tend to be a little bit more liberal, and well, I mean, to make a long story short, I mean, yeah, every people has weaknesses and stuff like that, and the thing is, though, is that it seems like Jews, because of their historical places in society, always being a nomadic people, or always never having a place of their own, anything like this. It kind of creates, and this is kind of the Kevin McDonald argument, right? It creates a certain psychology that influences their behavior, and I mean that's that's a problem, right? I mean, you can't have a rogue element running around your society, promoting things that are undermining your society, and which is that the guy that Uncle A said was the most dangerous man in Germany during the Weimar Republic, in the 1920s, was this guy named Magnus Hirschfeld rather, who was a homosexual Jew that was an outspoken advocate for all sorts of sexual degeneracy. I mean, at the end of the day, it's never, I mean, dude, it's Jews all the way down.
Well, no, my argument is always there must have been plenty of Gentile homosexuals running around doing the same thing. I don't know if that Jewish homosexual was necessarily the one that started all of this. I mean, its founding fathers, the Jewish founding fathers, were anti-homosexual. That's obvious. If Jews are promoting homosexuality in a bad way to undermine a society, they might be doing it because they dislike Gentiles. They might be using it in that way because they dislike Gentiles or they want to undermine Gentiles. But they got the idea from the Gentiles. They didn't go to their rabbis or their books, and that's where they got this from. I mean, they just came up with this on themselves. Individual Jews came up with this on themselves, or they just got sucked into it because, they weren't treated very well by the society, and now they have an axe to grind with the society, and so they're doing it in this way, or they just naturally think like this. I just think it's wrong to blame the Jews for homosexuality. I mean, I think, or homosexual rights, because you know what? Lots of Gentile gay people don't want to be treated that way, worked to end it. It wasn't like the Jews came in and were like,
I can meet you halfway. Okay. I don't blame the Jews for homosexuality. Right. I mean, I'd probably agree with you that, I mean, if you believe that, I mean, homosexuality, it occurs naturally in nature, right? I mean, there's homosexual geese, there's homosexual sheep, that have, the same partner, all throughout life and shit like that. I mean, homosexuality does occur naturally in nature, right? But what I can blame the Jews for is normalizing homosexual nature, right? Where now, I mean, let's do a little timeline of the gay rights, the gay civil rights in America. I mean, first they, we just want to live our own lives, we just want to get married, and then all of a sudden, to make a long story short, now we're at the time where we have these, trannies that are teaching, reading at libraries to 3-year-old kids, right? And we have Desmond is amazing, who was pole dancing, at this gay bar in New York, or Jew York, I should say. Right. I mean, it's the kind of normalization. I mean, if you wanna be homo, like I said, it's naturally occurring, but it's got to be kind of like the old military law: don't ask, don't tell. Whatever you do in the privacy of your own home, that's fine. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to happen one way or the other. But the problem is that's not what we're experiencing. What we're experiencing is, if you don't, what we're experiencing is bake the cake, bigot. And if you don't let a cross-dressing tranny, read to your kids at the public library, then all of a sudden you're a bigot, and you're the problem, not the fact that you don't want your kids to be exposed to all this kind of stuff, right?
Okay. Jews may be disproportionately involved in these things. That doesn't mean that they created it, and doesn't mean that they're disproportionately involved.
That's
Like
all I need to hear. That's all I need to hear. Disproportionately
they're
involved.
disproportionately involved. There's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, I don't think all of it is necessarily because every Jew wants to undermine society. I think that being outsiders, they gravitate. Like, okay, what book was that in? And did you ever read The Pink Swastika? Did we talk about that before?
The pink swastika.
Yeah, The Pink Swastika. It's the book that's all about the gay Nazis, who was gay in the Nazi party.
No, I've never heard of that before.
Oh, okay, I'll send it to you. But I think it was a German in the book, or a Nazi, was talking about it, and he was talking about the preponderance of homosexuals in all these subversive movements. And I mean, he said, and it's true, that the fact that they felt oppressed in society and underrepresented, that they were just desperate and they would join any type of revolutionary movement, hoping that it would change their position in society. And it's true, homosexuals are disproportionately involved in like communism and liberalism and leftism, and all these different kinds of movements and institutions, and high places in the media and business and all this other kind of stuff. You find a lot more of them than you find in the general population.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I mean, what point are you trying to make?
That Jews have the same problem in that I'm not saying Jews have the same problem in that being outsiders. That I'm not saying that Jews didn't have nefarious agenda for the Gentiles. Obviously, the no-hide laws are a nefarious agenda against the Gentiles, but they were. A lot of the mistreatment of Jews wasn't deserved. A lot of the times, the Gentiles would just go after, the average Jew who didn't necessarily know or do anything. There's just a general disdain for all Jews everywhere. And so they become attracted to radical movements that undermine society. And they also, there's also the sympathy. Jews, because of that, will necessarily feel a degree of sympathy for homosexuals and transsexuals, because they're like, well, I was outcasted, I was oppressed, you were outcasted, you were oppressed, you were made fun of all the time in school, I was made fun of all the time in school. I mean, that's why, a lot of gays are, for the, civil rights movement and into helping Black people and are anti-racist, because they can sympathize with them. I mean, they can sympathize with them. Of course, I can sympathize with other races very easily. You know what I mean? A lot of my friends are members of other races, and I can talk to them on a certain level that they understand, that we understand each other. Whereas if I were born a heterosexual white male, I probably wouldn't be as inclined to be sympathetic towards them.
Yeah, I mean, isn't this basically proving the point that, people, in order to create a lasting peace, people just need to be separated. And, people, white people need to have their culture, Jews need to have their culture, so on and so forth. Africans can have their culture. We need to, in order to have true diversity, we need to have, people need to be able to run their own lives without having to deal with, these blacks feel oppressed, living in white culture. These Jews feel oppressed living in European culture, so on and so forth.
Well, yes, I mean, I think that a lot of the problem is multiculturalism, and that the fact that if you mix them together and you leave them, of course, there's going to be prejudice and there's going to be hatred, and then they're going to become reactive, and then they're going to become antisocial, and all this other kind of stuff. It is an argument for that and for creating, ethno states or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't always necessarily know. People kind of like almost accuse Jews of, I don't know if many, many, many Jews are sitting there and being like, well, how do we destroy the Gentiles? Let's spread homosexuality and transvestism. I think they're.
Wait. Do you know what the Samson option is?
No.
So the Samson option is a Israeli military plan that says that, if all of a sudden Israel finds itself cornered, and they feel threatened enough, they will launch. They have submarines with nuclear missiles, and they'll launch these missiles at the entire fucking world, right? They have them aimed at the capitals of each nation. I mean, with the Jews, we're dealing with. You got to remember, right? This is going back to what I was talking about before about the psychology of the Jew, where because they have been pushed around and bullied, and they were in Babylon, and they were slaves in Babylon, they were slaves in Egypt, or whatever, slaves in Rome, whatever, right? I mean, these people are really kind of fucked up in the head, to where they are holding, like a 2,000-3,000 year long grudge against the rest of the world, and they have this deep seated hatred in their in their brain. I mean, I could understand your argument with other people, but with the Jews, I mean, these are really fucked up people.
Well, obviously, I'm not saying they're not, because I run an entire campaign against them, and the reason I do it is because I'm not saying that the only thing that Jews are doing is Noahide law. It's just I think that the Noahide law sums it all up. It gets it out there. Like, it's not like, oh, the Jews want to take over society and they think they're better than all of us and they want to make us second-class citizens because.
No, they do. They
I
exactly.
know,
They
but
do.
the Noahide laws are what says that on paper.
Well, I mean, Jews believe that themselves. I mean, dude, I remember there was this video that No More News put out maybe a couple weeks ago, where he posts all of these clips of different interviews of just random Jews in Israel or random Jews on the street wherever they are, and the interviewer is asking these Jews, what do you think about the Noahide laws? And like 9 times out of 10, no, I mean, no, basically, no, 10 times out of 10, these Jews are saying, oh yeah, I support the Noahide laws because, yeah, Jews are superior. Jews should be in charge. Jews are meant to be, the chosen people and leading the world into an eschaton. If you're familiar with the term amanatize the eschaton.
No.
To bring heaven upon earth. It's these Jews are kind of saying that, like, yeah, it's us Jews that need to lead the world into, I mean, this kind of ties into a little bit of Revelation and stuff like this, right? We need to lead the Goyim because they don't know what they're doing, and it's us Jews that are gonna lead the world into a new era, a new kind of utopian era.
Right, but the thing is that if you try to go at this from every other angle, what you're doing is it's inference, right? Look at how many Jews are disproportionately involved here. Look how many Jews are disproportionately involved there, and then you need to start getting into, well, both sides of the aisle are coordinating with one another. It gets very complicated, and
so what?
I think people get confused.
Yeah, I mean, but that's irrelevant, right? I mean, if the issue is complicated, then it's complicated, right? I mean, yeah, maybe we need to refine our message to make it more amenable to the lowest common denominator. But at the end of the day, I mean, if it's a complicated issue, it's a complicated issue. I mean, you can't really do anything about that.
Well, the Noahide laws simplifies that. It simplifies everything. It really,
sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's why I focus on it, and then all the other stuff will be taken care of. Because I mean, if once the world figures out what their plan is, which is their plan on paper, it's a Jewish plan. It's not a liberal Jewish plan. It's not a conservative Jewish. It's a Jewish plan.
What would be interesting is to do like a study. However the study is done, like just interviewing like random U.S. liberal Jews on the street, right? Like Hillary supporting Democrats or whatever. People that would have no secular Jews basically, right? And ask them. I mean, you don't ask them what do they think about the Noahide laws, but you ask them, what do you think about? I mean, you got to be a little bit like clandestine about it, right? Where you ask them one of the Noahide laws, but you don't tell them it's a Noahide law, right? Because they have no idea what that is in the first place. And then you ask them if they believe in that, if that sounds like a legitimate idea for them, right? And I guarantee you that even these secular, liberal Jews that don't even know what the Noahide laws are, they would, I guarantee you, more than likely, they would agree with it.
Well, I mean, I think it's a little bit different. I think if you went up to the average liberal Jew and you said, well, do you think that we should abolish idolatry and blasphemy? I think if it's not connected to the Noahide laws, they would say no. But as soon as they realize it's Noahide law and it's connected to them, then they come up with excuses and their story changes. Like a lot, like Duvid says that it's going to be interpreted liberally by Jews. How do you liberally interpret no idolatry, no blasphemy, no homosexuality? What kind of liberal interpretation are you going to come up with? I mean, what kind of gymnastics? That's when you start getting into gymnastics. If you told any Jew that something was anti-homosexual, and that you were going to interpret it liberally, they would tell you to go somewhere. But if it's their law, then it's possible to interpret it liberally.
When you say interpret it liberally, you mean no? They would find ways of proving, finding ways of proving that the no-hide laws are correct.
No, meaning that like finding ways to allow, like, okay, finding a way that would allow people to practice Christianity. Like, okay, so you label Christianity shituf. So you say, well, it's not full monotheism, but it's not polytheism either. The Trinity is almost monotheism, and you call that middle ground shituf, and then you say, well, shituf is permissible for non-Jews, even though it's debatable. So Jews debate, is shituf permissible for non-Jews or not? That's liberalizing it. So the conservative position is that Christianity is idolatry and you can't practice Christianity. And then they would come up and they would say, no, Christianity is shituf and you can practice it, even though rabbis, what's the word, disagree on that. So they liberalize it probably in theory, and then they're going to come and say, well, nothing's going to happen to you because you're practicing shituf. Don't worry about it. But that's just bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of going back into what you were talking about earlier, about how, the reason that Jews, advocate for certain policies is because, they feel a kinship with, those poor blacks, who were so oppressed by segregation, even though blacks were better off under segregation, and all this kind of shit. I mean, if you have a people that they're not even worried, or their concern is not, well, I mean, this is a problem with living in a society with basically a paranoid people, is that their solutions are worse than the fucking problem, right? If segregation is a problem to these Jews, and their solution is that, well, just let the niggers run rampant. It's just like, well, wait a second. And by the way, did you know that the ADL put the number 1350 on their hate speech list?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. So it's just like, even mentioning FBI crime stats is now hate speach, according to the
really,
ADL.
though? Will that
I mean,
you...
yeah. I mean, this is not a way forward for society, right? If we're trying to create a functioning society, trying to ignore the problem is it's just.
V, are you saying that the ADL is some chief rabbinate or something?
Some what?
You seem to be saying that the ADL is kind of like the chief rabbinate or something. So whatever they say, they can just pull something out of the air and say, you can't say 1350 anymore. And it's like, why do Gentiles just give in to them? Do they have some sort of magic power? Or is it because Gentiles are now so stupid and weak that they will just do any damn fool thing that is suggested to them?
I'll answer you. This is what me and Vincent were talking about earlier, is that, people, different people have different weaknesses, and especially in the past few generations of white people. I mean, especially post World War II. White people want to be nice. They want to be tolerant. They want to be accepting and all this kind of shit. And
I think it's a sex revolution. I think, it's like,
No, it's more than
okay,
that. It's more.
you can't actually, nobody will be able to say, oh, it's this or it's that, because they're all abstract ideas. What we can do is sort of look back on the history and say, why have, white people become like that? I do see how you could just ignore the French Revolution and say, oh, it's the Jews. It's like, well, okay, the ADL is telling you to do things you don't want to do, so why do you do it? And then you think, well, there's somebody at the top that's always giving in, that's always doing whatever, that's always following orders. And who is that? And why do they do it?
Yeah, like I said, white people today want to be. I mean, white people have this sense of fairness and this sense of justice that has been
No, but can you give an example?
inculcated
Has anybody...
over hundreds of years.
Okay, Facebook is understandable because it's like Mark Zuckerberg, he's Jewish, so he doesn't want you to be saying bad stuff about his people. So, I mean, is it even true that 1350 would get you into trouble if you posted on Facebook? I mean, or is it just some sort of urban myth?
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Yeah.
Okay. But anyway.
Actually, yeah. I remember actually posting a. I mean, this is slightly different, but I remember posting a graph of the IQ differences between blacks and whites on Facebook, and I got a 30-day suspension for that.
Okay, well, I've been,
I mean, it's a little bit different, but it's kind of the same ballpark.
But you could attribute it to the liberal establishment suddenly realizing that they're actually outnumbered and they're getting very, very nervous. So they've got their sacred cows, and they're saying, you come anywhere near our sacred cow and we're going to zap you. And these sacred cows happen to be all those things that, that you said, can't be said. You can't say anything mean about any other race, or anything that is anything to do with a protected characteristic of these protected groups, right? This is what's been happening. That if you belong to a group protected by religion or race or sexual orientation or gender or whatever. So what it does is it leaves out the white man, the white heterosexual male. So he's the one with no protected characteristics. He's so he's you. So what's happened to white men that they can't even organize themselves to say, hey, this is wrong, this is we're not going to put up with it.
I mean, this is the problem with having a minority group that an alien minority group having disproportionate influence in a society that they're not a part of.
Okay, it's like it's the Jews, and I'm saying no, it's not.
Yeah, it
is
the Jews.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm saying it's not. I'm saying it's not.
That's why I'm a Nazi.
I'm saying it's not. I'm saying it's not. I'm saying it's not. I'm saying it's because of the sex revolution.
Well, you're wrong.
No. How can you prove it?
Oh, you're wrong. I mean, this has been going on for a lot longer than the sexual revolution.
You have a sacred cow that you don't want.
No, you. I mean, is that what we're reduced now to? Is no, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. No, you're wrong.
Well,
I mean,
I'm
Claire,
just about to make my point.
Jewish influence.
No, I'm
the
saying
sexual
it's not.
revolution, the civil rights.
Okay, sex revolution.
I mean, that's basically just the camel or the hair, the straw that broke the camel's back.
Because that's so clearly the thing. Because it's not so much Jews as it is the feminists, and the only reason.
Oh yeah, Jews had no influence on the feminist movement.
No, it doesn't even matter, because the whole idea of feminism is bribing men with fornication, and any man who thinks they can that they're not tempted by some woman offering
this is exactly what Vince was talking about. People. Yep. Yeah,
Look,
yeah.
why can't I make my point on my own
Go.
stream?
All right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Because you're just going to say the same old thing again and
Go.
again.
Go.
And you keep
Oh.
forgetting
All
the
right.
one I'm making, which is the sex revolution. So men can't do anything about that because, it's like, well, if we even say anything, we're going to get into trouble, not just the Jews, but the feminists. Because the feminists don't want you to say, oh, it's a sex revolution, because it means that from that time on, any woman that we're not married to, we're allowed to have sex with. And but it's nothing to do with the current fallen state of Western man. Because have you noticed over the decades that you could have sex with more kinds of people, more different kinds of sex, and they're giving you more and more and more as time progresses, in order to distract you from your own fallen status. So first it was okay to have sex with women, not your wife. Then it was okay to be gay, and there were attempts to say it's okay to have sex with underage, adolescents who are underage. And then it, that was a taboo too far. But in practice, it happened simply because, the fear of pedophiles are just sort of, one of the things of Western culture. That it seems that every white man is a pedophile, up to and including Catholic priests.
But I mean, you're.
Yeah, but there is a correlation. You can't just sort of say, nah, because, look, what's happening now is
Wait,
that
can I answer now? Can I answer now that are you done with your screed? Can I answer?
All right, I was going to make a further point, but I think I can remember it.
All right. Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point with the pedophilia thing. I mean, because we are getting into a time now. I mean, for example, let's bring up Desmond is Amazing,
Who?
right? This 11-year-old kid, cross-dressing kid that was pole dancing. By the way, you know who I'm talking about, right, Vince?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, this 11-year-old kid pole dancing at a homo bar in New York, and videos of this went out all over the internet.
So who are his parents?
Was there any repercussions against this homo bar?
Okay, who were his parents?
No. Is that not in the realm of pedophilia?
Yeah. So who were this kid's parents? I mean, who are they?
Irrelevant.
Does he have parents?
Irrelevant.
No, it is relevant because we need to know why.
It doesn't matter who their parents are. What matters is that this kid was up there pole dancing and nothing happened.
Well,
That's
how come
nothing happened?
How come his parents allowed that to happen?
Irrelevant. The law should
is relevant.
Why didn't the law step in?
Because there's no law against allowing a kid to go pole dancing, I guess. If his parents allow it, does his parents allow it? Does he have parents? What?
I'm sorry. There are laws against this. No one
Okay,
under 18
what law
is allowed into a strip club.
Okay, so what law specifically makes it a crime?
Yeah, you have to get
Okay,
carded.
what crime does that
Am I crazy?
under?
Am I crazy right now, Vincent? Am I just totally off base? Or are there laws against people under 18 going into strip clubs?
Did he train in a strip club? I mean, what is the background of this Desmond? I mean,
yeah, he's the poster child for kids getting their dicks chopped off and shit like this.
Are you saying he's Jewish?
No, not at all.
So you weren't referring to...
I mean, I don't know if he is or not.
Okay. No, we have to make a distinction between castration and circumcision. So you were obviously saying that this kid can have a sex change or have some hormone suppressant, so that before he becomes 18, he can... this is what happens, isn't it? If a child wants to change his sex, but he's not yet 18, so he doesn't have this, the legal capacity to make that change. To make that decision, the law kind of allows him to kind of reserve his place and say, well, I might want to change my sex, and if I don't get these hormone suppressants, I won't be such a pretty boy if I decide to become a pretty
Yeah, I mean,
girl.
do you not see a problem with elevating the feelings of a child over
Of
the
course I
wisdom of the
do.
parents?
Of course I do. Which is why I'm asking you who his parents are, and you can't tell me. You don't know.
I don't know, but that's not the point, right?
It is the point. It's
No,
all
it's
about
completely irrelevant.
parenting.
It's completely irrelevant. The
Why
point
is
is
it
that
irrelevant?
nothing
You say,
happened.
how come this
Nothing
kid got to
happened.
do this and that? And I'm
There
saying,
was no
how
legal
come his parents
repercussions.
allowed him to do that? And you're saying it's irrelevant? Why do you say it's irrelevant?
Well, I mean, why did it happen in New York? I mean, I'm sure the answer is the same both ways.
Okay, so what is this boy's name so we can at least look him up?
Desmond is amazing.
He doesn't even have a surname?
I don't know. I don't remember. Just type in Desmond is amazing. You'll pull it up.
So nobody knows.
Hmm?
Nobody else seems to know. Alright. I think I made a typo.
Desmond Desmond.
I'm my computer's a bit slow at the moment, so I think I made a typo. So yeah, he's been allowed. Desmond Napolis. Okay, he's got a Wikipedia entry. He is 12 years old. He's got an Instagram account. A child drag performer. Let's see. Early childhood. So his mother was captivated by RuPaul's Drag Race. So he was 2. He watched RuPaul's Drag Race. His mother was with his mother and was captivated by the show's drag queens. And then he began to play dress up by fashioning household items into dresses and wigs. His parents early on thought he might be transgender because of his preference for girls' clothing. So we don't know any detail about his parents.
Born in Manhattan, New York. Yeah. Well, there.
Okay, so we don't know. We don't
comes
know
out?
the kind of parents he
You're
has.
6 years
We don't
old and
even
you
know
know that
if his
you're gay?
parents were married.
Huh?
I said we don't know any. I mean, okay, I don't know. So it's always say Desmond's mother said this, Desmond's mother said that. Is he even Jewish? We don't know. So he identifies as gay, and so I think the mother encouraged it, right?
Oh yeah. I'm looking at his early childhood.
Wait, but look, I knew I was gay when I was 5 years old. A lot of gay people know that they're gay when they're young without being introduced to anything, without being raped, without being suggested or anything like that. If you talk to a lot of gay people, they knew when they were very young.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. Like, sexuality is not something that really kind of occurs until you're into adolescence.
No, that's not true. Maybe it didn't happen for you, but look, little boys and little girls marry each other on the playground all the time. You know what I mean? They might not understand. I mean, I didn't know I might not have understood all the mechanics of sex or anything like that, but I knew I was attracted to men.
Okay, it seems like they're married because they call his parents Andrew or Wendy. What, Napoles? Napoles sounds. Oh, I don't know. So could be Italian, I suppose.
All right. Well,
Okay, I don't know, but obviously, a kid doesn't do this sort of thing unless their parents encourage him to do it.
No,
Okay.
not that's not necessarily true. If you leave children to their own devices, they'll do a lot of things.
Yeah, that is true.
They'll do a lot of things.
Okay, well,
Some
don't leave, you don't leave them to their own devices and don't let them do all these things then if you're going to
Well,
be a parent.
I know, but I mean, but okay, parents will disagree with each other all the time on what you should and should not allow your children to get involved with in their own devices. But some boys left to their own devices will dress like girls. They
Yeah,
just
because
will.
I mean, it's like a skirt. I mean, it's so much more fun than trousers because they kind of get all floaty and you can, yeah, I can understand that. It's like a cape or something.
That's not why they want to put on dresses.
Because it's more, it's more dressing up. Dressing up as mum is more dressing up than dressing up like dad.
I know, but look, they're okay. Even if it's not gay, even if it has nothing to do with homosexuality, some boys like more feminine things when they're young. Some boys like more masculine things. Some straight boys don't like sports or hunting or anything like that, and they're more into like either reading or I don't know. Maybe they aren't into playing with dolls. Maybe they prefer to play with their sisters or something like that. I mean, it, everyone think that if you're a little boy and you don't have a preference with playing with other little boys, well, then there must be something wrong and you're probably being encouraged. No, I mean, some little boys just like to play with girls and they like to play with girls' toys. I mean, nobody went in and fucked with them. That was just the way they came out.
I've got a report saying parents of 11-year-old drag queen investigated for child abuse. So, yeah, so somebody did do that, and I guess they didn't actually do anything that was obviously against the law, and that's why they got away with it.
All right, well, let's get back to the important issue. Now, Vince, I mean, you see something wrong with Desmond going to a 18 and older strip club and dancing on the fucking pole in front of a whole bunch of older men, right?
Yeah.
All right. All right. There. All right. That's all I need to hear. Claire seems to be having trouble just with that. Like, why? And here's the point, right? Why wasn't there any prosecutions in that?
Well,
The,
because the law
I mean,
is saying it's
It's
okay to be
because
transgender. That's why.
we have a reactionary liberal culture. The problem is that this liberalism, when I'm saying liberalism, I'm meaning this type of liberalism is reactionary liberalism, meaning that it is the product of being suppressed for such a long period of time. And so now they're like, oh, well, look at us. If no one had ever suppressed homosexuality, there would be no gay parades. There'd be no gay parades. The only reason there's a gay parade was because homosexuality was suppressed, and so now they have to come out. Like, why would gay people be proud? Because you tried to make them not proud. I mean, because for so long, people tried to make homosexuals feel horrible.
Oh, there's a
That
reason
now,
for that.
what?
There's a reason for that,
I know,
obviously.
but well, I don't know if there's a reason for it. But if you do that, you're gonna get the opposite. You're gonna get,
Yeah,
you know,
maybe something should be suppressed.
well, I mean, wait a second. I mean, now we're so you could make the argument that nowadays you're kind of being pushed and oppressed if you're a straight white male. But does that make me, want to go out and be like, oh, I need to have an 11-year-old girl, strip dance for me?
those are two different issues. I mean,
Yeah, they
Well,
are.
I mean,
Because
it,
obviously one is not what you propose is not allowed. Then you're not
but
allowed
only
to have
but there's
underage
it's
sex.
only but the point is that it's only happening on one side, and
What do you mean one
Claire,
no, it's
Claire
side?
was
not.
bringing up.
What do you
What
mean by
about those
one
beauty
side?
pageants? What about those beauty pageants where they dress their daughters up like whores and
Yeah,
makeup and
it's
short
part of the
skirts?
American culture. So we can say, ooh, look at the Americans. They're responsible for all this decadence with their child beauty pageants. They're the one who started all this pedophilia thing. I mean, you can just sort of forget the Jews and just go for the Americans. It's like it's where it all comes from.
I would
And they
say that
rule the world. They are the
those
world's number
beauty.
one superpower. Get them. It's all their fault.
I would say that those beauty pageants. That's more of a problem of the kind of celebrity culture that we live in, more than it is about. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some Jewish kind of pedophilia influence in those pageants, but I would think that the reason that that is more accepted is because of the celebrity culture that we live
Yeah,
in,
because it's
which
been
you could say is Jewish.
commercialized.
Celebrity culture is Jewish influenced by itself, I would say.
Well, it's commercialized. It's like, people make money out of child beauty pageants. It's glamorized, and if you have a pretty kid, you think you might want to do that because, it's fun.
Sure.
Or
Yeah.
yeah. So, but it comes from America. And, why do these things come from America? Because there's something about the American psyche that is, like that. Maybe it comes from your
No, it's not
constitution
about the
about the
American psyche.
pursuit
I
of
mean,
happiness. Maybe happiness should not be pursued in the American way.
no, American. What do you mean by American culture? Because American culture has changed over its
Well,
existence, right?
anything that comes out of America, yeah, I mean, that'll do.
Oh yeah, because American culture and the people who were promoting that, are completely the
So
same
sadly,
as who's
it's not
promoting it nowadays.
Americans. It's like, Jewish people do beauty pageants. Do they? I don't think so. It's a Gentile American preoccupation. Proper Jewish people wouldn't dream of doing anything like that. Exposing their children to that sort of influence.
Oh, sure they do. I mean, look at why is it so many famous actresses are Jewish?
Yeah, but we're talking about these child pageants, and we're talking about this Desmond. I don't think he's Jewish, is he?
I'm sorry. How old was Natalie Portman when she got into acting? Scarlett Johansson, Winona Ryder.
I don't know.
Just
Probably quite
plenty of
young. I mean,
non-Jewish child actresses. I mean, this is where it gets. This is where I don't think you're going to get anywhere by saying, "Look at these Jews who did this." There's plenty of non-Jews doing it, and it's just not going to cut it to say that Jews invented this.
yeah.
I mean, it's not going to cut it. It doesn't cut it because no one's going to believe that what are Gentiles so vapid they can't even come? Gentiles can't think of subversion themselves. I mean, this type of thinking makes Gentiles look really stupid, that they're not capable of any subversive thought themselves, and that as soon all you need is one Jew to spread one subversive idea, and like the whole system comes breaking down because Gentiles just can't think for themselves.
Well, no, it's
Well,
it's
maybe
not
they
that
can't
can't
because
think.
they haven't got a religion.
Let's be clear. Let's be clear, right? It's not that they can't think for themselves. It's just that most people in general, don't even think about these issues anyway. I mean, I remember, I was always kind of the kid in school that, read a lot or, was interested in history or things like this, whereas, for most other kids in school, oh, history's boring. Reading is for losers. All this kind of shit. I mean, that's kind of uh, you know, most people were more interested in the more base aspects of human society. Being being the jock, being the cheerleader, being popular, all that kind of shit. I mean, that's
Yeah, the whole high school culture, that's the really terrible thing about America, isn't it? Because it's been glamorized in movies and stuff. The
but
high school prom.
it's not purely an American thing,
But
right?
well,
I mean,
it
it's more of
is.
a
It's
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 more of
come
a
over to the
universal.
UK. And
No, it's more
no,
of a
no, no,
universal
you
human
have no
aspect.
idea how appealing American culture is to the average Briton who's not, you know, born in the upper classes. It's like that's the only thing they can aspire to be, because otherwise they'll be condemned by their accent, by their occupation, because the UK is such a class-ridden society. So there's a lot of American culture that is immensely seductive to the average working class person of any other country. The American dream, the big house, the big car, and of course, everything else that comes with it, the high school culture. And then it was only the last year that I discovered that. Well, actually, I'm not that surprised, because I've looked at how people behave, they're portrayed to behave in movies when they're in high school, and it's like, I'm not surprised at all the, high school shootings that go on, and how many, and how they go mad and want to kill everyone just because they're being
And
bullied
who's in
for
charge of
not being in
Hollywood
the right
again?
tribe in high
Remind
school.
me again, who's in charge of Hollywood, Claire?
This isn't really about Jews portraying.
But it is.
No,
But it
it's
is.
not, because this is
Are
how
you
it
are you
is.
saying that society is
No,
not
no, no.
influenced by
Can
the
you just
media
sort
that
of
they
stop
consume?
talking about Jews just for a moment? But we're talking about high
But it's
school
relevant.
culture.
It's relevant. It's relevant.
Why is it irrelevant?
No,
Because you don't want to hear
it
it?
is no, it is relevant.
No, I'm just
Right?
saying, it's toxic. You don't even learn anything. You just,
Yeah, and
fuck
who's
each
in
other,
charge of Hollywood?
and think it's so cool and American, and then you
And
wonder
who's
why
in
you
charge
don't
of
do
Hollywood?
well.
And who's in charge of Hollywood?
I think you've heard of censors. So if you don't like what's coming out of Hollywood, you
Am I wrong,
censor it.
Vincent?
And
Am I
there was
off base right now?
once upon a time it was censored, and Hollywood produced wholesome movies about wholesome people, for other wholesome people all around the world who wanted to buy into this idea of white culture and white people being superior, until something went bad in Hollywood. So, are you going to blame Jews for that, or are you going to blame the censors not doing their job,
Yes, I am
and
going
it being
to.
something to do
Yes.
with the sex revolution? So everybody thought it was okay to fuck each other as long as, well, nothing too bad happened immediately, apart from a few unwanted pregnancies that you can deal with through abortion. Until the culture is accepting of single mothers, because they are the majority
Abortion.
now.
Yeah, who promotes abortion the most?
I don't know. I mean, I guess people who fuck around.
Who is
People who fuck
who is
around. Maybe
Margaret
people
Sanger?
like you. Maybe people like you,
We know
Ovi.
who's
Because
the Jewish
anyone who fucks
Jewish
around
fish?
would want abortion. Because what is abortion but a way for the woman to get rid of her mistake? Who wouldn't want an abortion
Margaret
if they're
Sanger.
suffering
Yeah,
from
Margaret
unwanted
Sanger.
pregnancy?
Margaret Sanger wasn't Jewish, and she didn't believe in abortion. She believed in birth control. She was anti-abortion.
Who's this?
What?
Margaret Sanger wanted to use birth control to prevent abortion. She was anti-abortion, and she said you should use birth control to prevent it, and she wasn't Jewish.
Well, a lot of people think that. I mean, it's like, well, obviously you don't want to be suffering from unwanted pregnancy if you're a woman, and obviously you don't want some
Wait,
woman
no,
who's screwed to be
who,
saying, "Oh, I'm
who
knocked up."
is that? Who is that Jewish cunt that that made the comment about the reason that they created
Are you going to
created
get my
Planned
channel
Parenthood
into
was,
trouble?
stop,
Can you mind your language?
I'm not allowed to say cunt.
I'm. It's the other word that combines that somehow,
Yeah, before you said the N-word, can Claire get a strike for that?
Because I
No.
mean, it's like you're so stupid and you want to do that, and then you say, "Oh, it's the Jews." It's like, you know what the rules are. You know what happens to people's channels when you say these words, and you say it and you say it, and then you say, "Oh yeah, it's the Jews doing this to us," and it's the rules. And it's just a dumb shit thing, and then it's like you have nothing more to blame. You just want your confirmation bias to just keep coming true. I mean, you don't have to say that, but you want to say that because what is your idea of political activism? Is it to say rude things about these different groups and then get a strike, get your channel taken down, get other people's channels taken down, and yeah, it's the Jews. I mean, Duvet got his
Remind me again, who's in charge of YouTube?
some woman
Susan
called
Susan Wojcicki.
Yeah, some Pole.
Oh yeah. Not just some Pole, a Jewish Pole.
Yeah. Okay, maybe so we're saying, are we, that Jewish people are cleverer because of Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook?
No, we're
and
not saying that. No, not at all.
Okay, so they're stupid, but they still get to rule over you. Which is it? Make up your mind. Are they cleverer than you and they rule over you, or
No,
they're stupider
they
than you
just
and
have they
somehow
just
they
have
still rule over you because you're even stupider than them? I mean, I don't think you can get round this intelligence thing, can you? So I mean, why are you so stupid? Why are you so stupid? You just enjoy it?
Oh, Claire. Claire,
No. It's like
you're getting a little bit bent out of shape now.
well, I'm just saying, you know, you just want everything to be the cause that you say it is, and that's all there is to it. I mean, you have no moral agency as a Gentile. A Jew just has to say something, and you do it without thinking, without
Yeah,
questioning, without
that's what I
challenging. I mean, what is it? I mean, if you are like that, then maybe you deserve to be exploited and abused because you're cattle and you can't think for yourselves or you can't organize yourselves. You have no sense of right and wrong. You just follow orders. What is
Did
it?
did I not just get done saying that I was always kind of the more of an outcast in school where I remember seeing all of these jocks and cheerleaders just being low IQ jackasses.
Mm-hmm.
you know I mean to be fair, most people are low IQ compared to me, but yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's a completely separate situation, right?
But I'm
I
just
mean,
saying
the
it's the
reason
American high school
that I'm
that is
here right
obviously.
now is because I see through the bullshit. I mean, I don't even know what your point is.
My point is that you have a rotten culture which you think is so wonderful and American. And this is something I discovered when I was. Can I
I've
make my
always been
point?
against modern
I
American
just would like to make my point about American high school, and it might be something of interest to you because I discovered this through Luke Ford. I think it was the first time I appeared on his show, and there were all these people talking about the American high school and how much. Somebody said in the chat or on the stream how much he hated his high school and that he would actually happily go back and shoot it up because he had such a terrible time. Because the culture of bullying and
Oh yeah,
condoning
he was a Jew.
bullying.
He was a Jew, by the way.
So what? It invalidates his complaint or it what? I'm sure
Oh,
there were
I'm
plenty of
saying
Gentiles who
that
were horribly bullied in that kind of shit culture that you think is so wonderful, that everybody around the world still thinks is so wonderful. American high school. They make musicals about it and stuff.
what I'm saying is more likely than not, if you're making these extremist decisions, especially as a young person, you're probably going to be a Jew.
Sorry, what
Uh,
extremist? Sorry, what extremist?
Columbine, the Columbine, one of the Columbine kids was Jewish. The kid at that school in Florida was Jewish. There was that other kid in California, Northern California, was Jewish. The one that they called an incel, he was Jewish. Uh,
Okay, I'm just saying
most
it's
of the
actually
child
irrelevant.
most of the child
Okay,
shooters are pretend to be Jewish.
Okay, so you're saying Jews get bullied at school and then they start shooting their school up because what the nerds and the geeks and they just want to
Dude, I got
study.
bullied at
I
school,
mean,
but
were
I
you
didn't.
bullied at school? Were you
I got bullied at school. I got
okay?
bullied
Okay,
at school.
and you didn't go
I didn't
shoot them
shove
up. But
anything.
basically, the culture of American high school is that you're nothing if you're not an attractive adolescent female and you're not good at sports. You get bullied. You get called a geek and a nerd, and you get your glasses smashed and your books torn up, or something like of that nature, right?
What?
I'm just saying that it's the prom king and the prom queen kind of person that gets treated well at high school, and everybody else is relegated to, well, being bullied, right? Or wrong? I don't know. I mean, obviously, I haven't been through that system. I haven't been to that grinder of a system, but from what I've heard, I probably wouldn't enjoy it. Because a culture of learning is not encouraged, and you were saying that you come from a culture where reading is for losers, and if you did read, you'd get bullied, right?
Sure, yeah.
So you're actually encouraging a culture of stupidity, and
Now you lost me. I don't know. I don't see how I'm encouraging it.
well, not you necessarily, but the American school system, the public school system, as you call it in America, it's not the best in the world. It doesn't encourage learning.
Yeah, but it used to be a lot better than it was, right? And this is where I was trying to make the point about you're saying that American culture has always been this way.
No, I didn't say it's always been this way. I mean, obviously there was a time when it was okay, but something happened, something
Yeah,
intervened
yeah,
to
yeah.
turn it bad, and
Jews happened.
Okay, it doesn't really matter what anyone,
Yes, it does.
anything, because
Yes, it does.
it's like, okay, so you're saying the Jews are responsible for the sex revolution, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so which particular Jews was responsible for the sex revolution?
Oh, I mean, the sex revolution is basically the feminist revolution, right? Which is Jewish, right? I mean,
Okay, so you're going to say, Betty
we've
Friedan
had this
and
conversation
all
before.
those people. Okay, so
We've had
you
this
have
conversation before.
these blue stocking women who happen to be Jewesses who go to American universities and they rise to the top because they're cleverer. But it's like, what was it with American Gentile men that they didn't challenge it? Why didn't they challenge it?
Well,
Are they
I mean,
stupid? Or weak or corrupt, or maybe they were bribed with the sex, and they just didn't protest against it anymore.
all right. So this is the thing: is that if you have a certain sect of the population that has disproportionate influence and has I mean, and here's the thing.
No,
It's
no,
not,
we're not
this is not a,
talking
this is not
about
just
that. I'm
wait,
asking you.
thing.
I'm asking you why Gentile white Western men didn't protest, and I'm saying I know exactly why.
If you want to give me a chance to answer, I'll answer your question. Yeah. So this is not necessarily a white person problem, or this is more of a human problem, right? Where humans are social creatures, and humans want to be part of the in-group because we are social creatures, right? I mean, this happens in Asian cultures, this happens in African cultures, it happens all over the world. And you see what has happened in European societies is under the Jewish media influence, where with shows like Friends or whatever it might be, going back to the sexual revolution, going back to the Civil Rights Act, all of this kind of thing. media has taught citizens, European citizens, that they need to act a certain way in order
Yeah,
to be part of the.
I understand why, it's like you're saying it's condoned, this culture is being encouraged and regurgitated and accepted by the media, and the media is more powerful than anything because, the box is king. It's God in the average American and non American household, I imagine. So, what you're saying then is that there was no censor. It's like anything commercial would be broadcast and it would be accepted, and there was nothing to stop it. It's like, oh, but maybe this is wrong. Maybe we shouldn't allow this. So there was no voice in America at all.
There used to be censors. There
Okay, so
used to be
what
censors, but they've been
happened?
done away with.
What
Yeah,
happened?
yeah. I mean, you look at if you look at the history of Jewish involvement in media, they didn't really come into power until around the 1960s.
Okay,
I
so
mean, and then you see the sexual revolution, the civil rights revolution, all of these kinds of things. I mean, all it takes is putting two and two together.
yeah, and
Figure out
I
who
have put
is the
it
problem.
together in this way, which is that the sex revolution transferred a lot of power from men to women, and men are just crap at saying no to no string sex. So in the 60s and 70s, they got a lot of sex, they were hooked on it, and then women were expected to
What
provide more
man
and more
man
sex.
isn't crap at saying no to sex?
Are you saying that men are better at saying
Yeah,
no to no
I'm
string
saying
sex?
it's not a white people problem. It's more
I
of
exactly. So
it's more of a men problem than
I
anything.
know, and I'm saying that okay, this is my thesis that men have been bribed with fornication. If you know your Bible, you would know that this is something that it disapproves of. Well, even Jews know it's not to be done, with the
Well,
Moabite
yeah,
and Midianite
which is
women,
why
and Phineas, a zealot who speared to death a copulating couple and impaled them simultaneously while they were in the act of copulation. So this is a very arresting image, and it's in the Old Testament. That was before the Jews finally reached their promised land. So if you know your Torah, as any Jew would, it's like, well, we're not supposed to be fornicating with each other, much less Gentile women, or the penalty is death. So really, if you people knew your Bible, you'd say, okay, not supposed to do that, we won't. But anyway, the sex revolution. But I mean, the trouble is nobody really believes in the Christian apprehension of
wrong,
God.
wrong. Yeah, I was waiting for you to go down this path. But by the way, I've got a point to make, but just want to bring this up real quick. I mean, Vincent, do you ever feel a little bit suspicious how much Claire tries to carry water for the fucking Jews?
Yes, it is suspicious. I mean, and the Noahide laws, and I don't know why. And that, but then I mean, she turns it all around. She says, "Well, why would anyone want Jew administered Noahidism? Nobody's going to want that." Claire, why would they want? You say that everyone wants the Noahide seal of approval, so why wouldn't they want to go the next step and actually become Noahides?
Because nobody is stupid enough to want somebody of a different racial group and a different religious group to be administering their religion for them.
But they're stupid enough to want to go get their seal of approval and walk away with their certificate.
Because it's universal. The no-hide laws are universal. So,
According to the
yeah,
Jews,
and nobody can deny that if they were being rational. But obviously you have your thing and you're going to say, oh, it's a terrible thing. But basically, if you are, if you believe in the Abrahamic God as a Gentile, you would think, oh, it's fair enough. We shouldn't blaspheme against God. We shouldn't be idolaters, and all the five are pretty universal anyway. So they'd be okay about that. But you've just gone so far the other way that you actually think it's a terrible thing, the no-hide laws, and it just shows how far away you are from your Judeo-Christian roots. And you don't know your Bible. You don't know about the no-hide
is
laws.
no such
You
thing
don't
as
give a damn
Bible.
anyway because you're
I
all
do know the
atheists
Bible.
anyway.
But Claire, what if
I actually
you-
wanted to make a point that the important point was what OV was saying, that I carry water for the Jews, and I was talking about fornication, and you want to deflect from that. We were getting into a very productive area of discourse, which was that men, it's a male problem. If men get offered no string sex, they can't say no, and once they've not said no for maybe 2 decades, they just can't say no anymore, and this is your problem, and this is how civilization starts. You're hooked on it, and you're not even going to give it up or think about giving it up. So you're just going to blame the Jews until you go to your graves. Even though your civilization crashes and burns, it's still the Jews. It's nothing to do with you, nothing to do with the sex revolution, nothing to do with the feminists bribing you with sex.
No, the problem is that once that foot has gotten into the door, like, oh, don't you want free sex, men? Oh, yeah, well, of course we do. Once that foot gets in the door, and then all of a sudden women have all of this new power, they're no longer in the workplace, they're no longer getting married, now they have the right to vote, etc., etc. Now all of a sudden when men do see a problem, which they are nowadays, especially the more religious, Christian conservative men are seeing a problem. They're all of a sudden it's too late. We're not even allowed to. Huh?
It's not too late. It's not too late if you change your religion because let's face it, nobody can believe in the absurdity of the Trinity. That's why it can't work for you.
If we just convert everyone in America to be Quranist, then everything will be solved.
But you need to shame sluts,
Claire,
but you won't
Claire,
do that because sluts have become your sacred cows.
You realize how absurd the idea of
What's so
convincing
absurd about
everyone
it? You've just agreed with me that men can't say no to no-string sex with women not their wives. So I'm saying, well, shame the sluts. And you're saying, no. What a terrible thing. How dare you? It's taboo. We worship sluts. We don't worship God. We worship sluts.
No. I mean, remember, when the hippie movement came about, these were all teenagers, right? I mean, these were kids, basically, that were advocating, or that were hippies and were advocating for the free sex movement, right? These were kids. What do you expect them to do with hormones, raging, right?
So you're saying it's too late to correct it? I mean, you're just not going to correct it anymore. Is that what you're saying? Are you like Livy, the Roman historian, saying we can neither bear our vices nor their cure? Because it's happened before. This has happened before, which is why there has been this taboo against extramarital sex, which the West has been breaking for about 50 years now, and it's like, they can't even imagine not doing that anymore. So I guess you're not going to be correcting yourself, but I guess all civilizations fall in the same way.
This is your problem, Claire, is that you don't understand evolutions of societies.
I do. I'm just saying it's happened before. I mean, the Chinese have yin and yang.
So your problem? No. Here, let me explain. Your problem is that you look at the situation that America or Western culture is in today, and you extrapolate that to mean that this is the way that Western civilization always has been. And that's not the case. The only reason that Western civilization is in the situation today is because of the Jewish influence, which has only grown more powerful within the past few decades.
Yeah, because of the sex revolution, because it's made you stupider and weaker and more corrupt and even less prepared to acknowledge that you make mistakes, much less correct them. So
I made mistakes.
That's the situation you're in.
I don't know what
why
you mean
not
by
admit
I
it?
made mistakes. I wasn't born when the Civil Rights Act was going on.
I'm
I
not
wasn't
blaming
born
you
during
personally.
World War II.
I'm not blaming you personally. I'm just telling you what happened.
No, it sure
And
sounds that way.
you seem to be going along with it, and now you're saying,
Going along
because
with
you have
it.
to take responsibility for it because we can't blame the Jews anymore. It's like,
Claire?
well,
Claire, I have to go.
okay.
All right, I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay,
All right.
Thanks for starting it off, Vincent. I'm sorry, it's been a bit of probably boring you.
All right. Yes. Great. Thanks.
Okay,
See you, Vince.
Bye.
bye, Vince. So Ovi, so you're saying, the sex revolution, the Jews fought, and now you can't correct yourself. Also, the Jews fought, and I'm saying, why did you fall under the spell of the sex revolution? Because you didn't even believe in your own religion anymore. That there were prohibitions in Christianity against that sort of thing. But because you didn't believe in your religion, you just said, well, forget it. We'll just do whatever we like, and there's no. It's the New Testament isn't a sufficient document to stop you from doing anything. So, and since you never believed in it anyway, because your ancestors were forced into believing it, right? When you think of the blasphemy laws and, why America separated the church from their state, from its state, it's pretty obvious why, people rejected Christianity even before they realized they were rejecting Christianity.
No, I'm not following.
Okay, I'm just saying that, the Americans were known to be the first to formally separate the church from their state, right? Separation of powers, separation of church and state. It was in America
Sure.
that happened in the 1820s, I believe.
Sure.
When you were, just, putting the final touches to your constitution, and there was a reason for that, because there were these there was Christian on Christian persecution that the Pilgrim Fathers escaped from on the Mayflower, but they were Puritans fleeing the Anglican persecution of them, right? It was James II who was persecuting them anyway. So they arrived in America, and lo and behold, the Quakers and the Puritans were fighting each other, and they couldn't blame the Church of England anymore, because it just wasn't there to do stuff. So anyway, in the 1820s, the Americans said, no, we're not going to have an established church, because, the moment the Americans did have an established church, then all the other religions would fall below it, and then, they would, oppress the other kinds of Christians, as they did in the UK. So the Americans decided to give everyone equal status, basically. So it doesn't matter if you're Jew, Christian, or whatever. You just didn't get to lord it over anyone in America. But America was still a God believing nation, because you still have it on your dollar bills, and God we trust, and all that kind of thing, and the perception of most Americans is that it's a Christian country. But the thing is, you didn't really believe in it, and that is a problem. You have this thing that you don't really believe in, and you think it should work, and then and it doesn't work. Because if it did work, you would be saying, well, the Bible says we shouldn't be doing this. Or if you were Muslim, you would say, well, the Bible says we shouldn't be fornicating. And, so no sex revolution, no thank you. But as it was, you couldn't say no. And now, 50 years on, it's like you can't even imagine giving it up. And I'm saying that is really the problem. You can blame Jews or whatever, but it's because you can't give it up. That's why you had the Kavanaugh trials. That's why women can just accuse a man 20 years later of some historic sexual offence and make the charge stick, and nobody cares. But actually, it's Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 15, that says that no man shall be convicted of any crime on the uncorroborated testimony of a possibly lying witness. It's already there, but nobody even thought to refer to it, in their Christian country during the Kavanaugh hearings. So, obviously you don't believe in it anymore. You don't believe in all that crap. And I'm saying no society can continue to exist if it doesn't at least observe the minimum standards of sexual morality, which is to make sure that most parents in your society are not unmarried parents. And in the UK, over 50% of parents are unmarried parents, and it's 50% in Canada. I think it's 40% in America. So you're getting that way, and I'm saying that is really more the problem. But you prefer to blame Jews. So,
well, yeah, I mean that's kind of ironic that you say that, because I mean I agree with you on a lot of what you say. We should get rid of no fault divorce. We should be having, all this kind of
I'm
thing,
so
right?
glad you mentioned it. And why can't you? Why will nobody even talk about abolishing no-fault divorce? It's because you don't need to have to be married in order to have sex. That's why nobody's bothered.
You're missing the
And no
point.
one wants to get married anyway now. So that is really the main obstacle.
The problem is that you're not willing to admit that Jews are part of this problem that we're in today.
What Jews are expected to make sure that Christianity works? Is that it? I mean, you have a religion. It's supposed to be working for you, but you when it goes wrong, you expect the Jew to be responsible for your religion not working? Why?
No, what I'm saying is that Jews are responsible for the erosion of a lot of our traditional white foundations.
Okay, you have to give an example. It's like, okay, you get people who
I
have
have. We've been over this. We've been over this 100 times.
Yeah, but you never accept
Feminism,
the
the
point.
sexual revolution,
Always.
the influence of Hollywood, the
Yeah,
influence
but
of the liberal media. Whatever it might be.
Okay.
We've been over this.
I think we're agreed, weren't we, that Hollywood was, once upon a time there were censors, and the stories were wholesome, of wholesome people, and then something happened, and we agreed, didn't we, that it was a sex revolution that intervened, and then, everything became okay. The sex scene, the gratuitous sex scene became compulsory in any movie to get the punters in, and then...
Remind me again, who made pornography legal?
I don't know.
In America?
I don't know. Why do you expect me to know such a thing?
Do you want to make a guess if he was Jewish or not?
Well, okay, so you're saying... So who was it? Hugh Hefner.
Al Goldstein.
Okay, I've never heard of him. So what was he? Was he a pornographer?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Okay, and why didn't the majority of Gentile Americans have any protection against that sort of thing? Because they were well into their sex revolution, and so we know what the problem is. So I guess
who was advocating for the sex revolution again? Remind me.
Was there any particular person who was doing it?
Well, I mean, let's keep in mind, right? I mean, the whole concept of the civil rights movement is a Jewish movement. The ACLU. I mean, the.
I don't even know what
do
that
we have to go back
stands
to
for.
the? Huh?
I actually don't know what the ACLU stands for.
American Civil Liberties Union.
Okay, I guess that kind of thing was fashionable in the 70s, for all sorts of reasons, I guess. But the main
I'm
thing
just
was
saying.
that
All I'm saying,
the
Claire.
sex
All I'm saying,
revolution was the
Claire.
thin end of the wedge.
Yeah. All I'm saying is that if ever you find a movement that is advocating for liberalism or advocating for undermining traditional beliefs or advocating for progressivism, you're going to find a Jew in there, high up somewhere.
Well, so your religion, I'm saying Christianity is kaput, and you seem to be agreeing with me, or you're saying, oh, the Jews made Christianity kaput, but I'm going to be asking you, since when has somebody not of that religion be expected to protect it? So if Christians can't look after their own religion, why blame the Jew? I mean, this is so incredible that what you're saying, that if a few Jews can subvert your entire religion, then I guess it wasn't much good to begin with. So use another one and start with secular corruptism.
So if Christianity is kaput, then why is it that the Christians are the last holdouts of preserving traditional society?
In America, because you have
Sure.
no
Yeah.
other religion, because it's like you've always been majority Christian. So and obviously this is the group that keeps voting Republican, but they're shrinking all the time, aren't they? I mean, because republicanism used to be conservatism, and now it's okay for Republicans to be gay and all kinds of things. So this is all part of the sex revolution. And obviously the whole thing was that you're not really supposed to be having sex with anyone you're not married to. And that really was the universal rule that everyone accepted without question. Everybody would accept that the purpose of marriage is for legitimate children, and obviously any respectable person would want to marry and have children and bring up the next generation. And now we're being given the opposite message, that it's okay if you don't want to get married, it's okay to be gay, it's okay to want to change your sex, and that is causing the kind of gender confusion that we were talking about at the beginning, about Desmond and all that. And obviously, if you're not bringing them into existence and not parenting them properly, then you will get stupider and weaker, and be prone to doing all sorts of crazy, stupid things that, people might be suggesting that you do. With no protection. Nobody's saying, oh, but that's not a good idea. Our holy book tells us not to do this sort of terrible thing. And even though you might sneer at Muslims for being stupid and backward, at least they know that the least they can do is reproduce and have legitimate children and stay together for the sake of the children and bring them up properly, or you just wouldn't be in existence at all. And if you don't have children, you will have an aging population, and the national character of an aging population will be very different to one that is mostly, that is a young population. So you won't be able to do anything because you'll be risk averse old women. Your nations will take on the character of an elderly woman who doesn't want to change her ways, whose life is full of lost opportunities and regret that she can't bring herself to talk about. So she will censor you. We know women like that, don't we? Or I do, and you can't talk about a whole bunch of things with them, and they won't be changing their ways. And if you think of a whole nation becoming like that, then you're doomed. And nobody's even talking about abolishing no-fault divorce, because it's because men don't even want to get married, so they're not interested in talking about such esoteric things like no-fault divorce. It's not something that is a concern of the alt-right, is it? But did you hear Richard Spencer talking about Islam with Ed Dutton?
No, I didn't.
You didn't. I thought it was so. What's the
Well,
word?
let's maybe we can talk about that another time. I gotta get going myself as
Okay,
well.
yeah.
But
I'm all talked out as well. So thank you for coming by and making this actually quite an interesting debate.
yeah, hopefully I didn't interrupt you too much this time, right?
No. I'm really pleased at how it went and how the conversation developed and how you said all the things that gave me the opportunity to make my point. So I'm very grateful to you, Ovi. And
All
hope to
right.
talk to you again soon.
Yep. See you, Kyle.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.